called Mom Magic.
That's right. It's about the everyday parenting choices that could make a big difference on our children.
Rebecca, I read the blog a lot. My first question is, who the hell do you think you are telling me how to raise my kids?
I have a degree in early childhood education, but my greatest education has been raising 3 beautiful kids of my own.
Okay, Rebecca, what other bullshit do you have the nerve to share with us this morning?
I talk about this in my book, and it does take a lot of effort, but parents really should teach their child a second language. My daughter Hazel and I are learning French together.
Wow, I'll bet a lot of moms watching right now are thinking, you.
Well, I get that a lot, but the window during which language acquisition skills are at their peak is really very small.
I wish I had done that. You win, but guess what I just remembered? You're not my boss.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And I forgot to change the title of the streams. That's what I forgot to do while sitting here until it was like, I didn't think about it till the show's on. So even though the title of the streams is something you might have seen the other day and you don't think it's a new show, I'm not even sure what it's titled right now, but it's not the correct title. But this is a new show. We're live right now on November 30th. There we go.
It's the last day of November.
Yeah, I thought about that today. Yeah, it's still titled Liberty Conspiracy. No, this is Free Talk Live in the studio. And with you on the show tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Stu.
And Riley.
And some people are listening on the radio, I'm sure, too, so...
It will make sense to them that we're talking about the streams and the titles and things like that.
But you can also find us actually streaming every day at freetalklive.com. And this show is all about being able to call in and talk about whatever you want. That number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And we have a lot to talk about, as always. I feel like it's just great when there's an election, and then after the election, you just have a lot to talk about.
There definitely is a lot to talk about after the election, from Trump making all the picks he's making, and the left overreacting, and the left still talking about how dangerous Trump is, and the right being slobbery all over Trump. It's just entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's like SummerSlam.
One thing I saw today of people freaking out about Trumpism, or, Trump, people with Trump derangement syndrome, which is just a really funny term. And I used to think it was cringe, but the fact that it's just a real thing, it makes it not cringe to me anymore.
Of all the psychological diseases that I've heard of, that one rings the most true. It makes me kind of want to believe in psychological illnesses, even though I don't.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. I feel like, people can have a tendency towards having some kind of flawed worldview that makes them act a certain way, and then we call this group schizophrenia, this group, whatever.
I just don't think it's correct to call it a disease in that way.
As if it's because, I can't do anything about it.
You're not going to fix that one with drugs. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's true. There's lots of them.
Not medical advice.
I don't think you can fix a lot of them with drugs. There's so much more you need to do to stop being depressed than just take a drug. There's not been any drug that got... invented that fixes it.
Antidepressants aren't meant to cure depression. They're meant to suppress the symptoms that you're experiencing, just trying to, regulate your mood. You're still going to get depressed, but you're just going to be emotionally numb. Yeah. Essentially.
And I don't think enough people are have that explained to them before they go into it, because so many people talk about, I went on antidepressants and it didn't make me feel better, it just made me feel numb. And it's like, well, yeah, because there isn't pharma stuff. There isn't medicine made to cure depression, and I think some people really think there is, but there's not.
Oh yeah, yep.
But so one thing I saw on the topic of Trump derangement syndrome was this lady showing these really pretty ornaments she makes. So they're basically like a ball, and it has like a crocheted outside, so it's like got this texture, and it's pretty, made of different yarn, and it's colorful. And she was like, this is a good present to make for your relatives who voted for Trump. You take this ball, you put a nasty note inside of it to them, and then it's like opaque on the outside, so they'll never know, and they'll hang it on their tree every year. And that's like the craziest human being I've ever heard.
That is
of.
a little crazy, yeah.
Yep.
That's horrible. And
That's weird.
that I feel like it would affect somehow, like I believe in like the whole Dr. Emoto stuff, like how he like said that, you could say different things to water and it would react differently. Like if you said positive things, the water would freeze in a beautiful snowflake, symmetrical type of pattern. If you said like I hate you, it was just like not a pattern at all, like just like chaos.
It was like totally scattered and weird looking, and then yeah, I saw that study too. It's interesting. I also saw some things that said it was faked, but I don't think. I think there was at least some credibility to the story.
Yeah.
Whether it was embellished a bit or not.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't like really looked into it. It just makes total sense. Well, I mean, like looked into like, here's the evidence for and against it, or if it's been recreated. I don't know.
Yeah, water structuring is a fascinating concept altogether too.
Yeah, I only drink structured water the best I can. I filter it in a carbon filter, and then I put it into these 2 jugs I have that I don't remember what they're called right now, Flashka or something, and they're made of because glass is not structured. It's just non-structured crystal, or it's not crystal. It's not crystal because it's not structured. So glass is not structured, but they made a glass that is. So it's like a crystalline structure, but it's like glass.
Yeah.
And you put your water into that. It's supposed to structure it. And for good measure, I have crystals inside of both of the jugs. And I have an organite that I made that I have touching the jugs at all time. And I only drink, and coconut only drinks that water.
Have you noticed a difference?
I don't drink like, I need to get hit this much water each day anymore. And it's been a long time of changing so many things that it's hard to say if it's exactly this, but...
Have you had non-structured water at all recently?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. And I was going to say, anytime I do drink something that's non-structured, it's like if I'm drinking something out of a can, I'm really just finishing these juices that I got from Spindrift for Thanksgiving. I got for like people that were coming over, and I didn't want like them to only have water to drink. So I'm drinking that. It has water and juice in it. And then I like mineral waters, so if I can find Topo Chico, it's been like not around recently. The thing is, I don't feel thirsty every day. Like at Pork Fest, even people were all so thirsty. I brought some of my own water, and when I ran out of that, I was just drinking. This one stand was selling coconut and watermelon juice, and I was only drinking that. Everybody else was like downing water all day, and I was not drinking as much as them, and I was not dehydrated.
Interesting.
Thirst is actually one of the later symptoms of dehydration. You should be drinking water before you get thirsty.
I don't know. I just don't think that I have to drink a whole bunch of water like some people think they do, because they're thirsty all day because they're drinking dead water that's like taking out all their minerals.
Yeah, it could be. Yep.
And that's the only way I can think to answer your question if I feel any different. But I don't know. One thing that is so interesting to me is if I put any kind of water in Coconut's bowl, he acts like normal about it. But if I put Topo Chico in his bowl, it's like once he gets around to going and drinking it, he'll just like go drink the whole thing.
Oh, so he likes Topo Chico?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I would have thought that it would freak him out because it's like bubbly and stuff, but no, he really he likes it.
Oh.
Other than that, he just like drinks water when he wants to. You can't tell him to drink it. He'll just like drink it when he wants to. He drinks a little here and there, unless he's just gone on like a hot walk and he comes inside and drinks a whole bunch of water. But like throughout the day, it's just like a little bit here and there. And yeah, I think we should all be like dogs and not just say, the internet told me I need to drink blah, blah, blah ounces per pound of body weight, and I got to get it in whether I want it or not. It's making me feel bad. And I can't tell,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of verifying your own results.
Like going off how you feel.
Yeah, or even like seeing what the dog says, because a lot of times animals are far more sensitive than human systems are to these kinds of things. So Yep.
I think that's totally true. I think that we have like an animal side and a side that maybe came from something else, and that's why we have like the ability to think higher than them, quote unquote. But I also think we should be more like them sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the Native American legends, for example, talk about the animals surrounding them all the time and different aspects of them and what, how you could learn life lessons from the animals and whatever.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot of Native American aspects to talking about animals and what they symbolize and things like that.
That's interesting. They also like name themselves after like a lot of animals.
Yeah, I noticed that, there's a difference between Christian beliefs about the serpent and like the Mayan beliefs about the serpent or the Amazon beliefs about the serpent. The serpent is seen as a sign of change, of going to the underworld and shedding old stories and, those sorts of Mesoamerica belief systems. But, Christianity teaches that the serpent or the snake is an evil thing.
Quetzalcoatl, the flying serpent, supposedly came to the Mayans and taught them a whole bunch of stuff, and they were like so grateful to him. He taught us everything.
Maybe that was actually Jesus. Who knows?
There is this idea that Jesus went to I think Mormons believe it, but also other people believe that Jesus went to other continents while he was alive.
Yeah.
I also think it is probably true that if he was alive, he went to India, and I really want to read that book. I think I mentioned it last time we were all three on, that it's just called like Jesus Was in India. But I was saying earlier that it's great after a election because there's a lot to talk about. And one of those things, Elon Musk seemed to be really involved in Donald Trump getting elected.
Yeah, really involved.
Which in a way can be a little creepy. I don't like 100% trust him. I don't love him. And I really don't like the idea of, we should just go to Mars. Yeah, we didn't learn enough lessons here, so we'll just like F up the world and then go to another one. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah,
that's a great way to do things.
It's nice to think that we could travel to Mars or whatever, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating that we're messing this planet up and we're going to go to another one.
I feel the same way about AI. It's like, we don't even understand everything about animals, but we need to have a new type of being and treat it like it's exactly like a human. We don't even treat animals like they're exactly like humans.
We don't even understand our own consciousness, and now we have an artificial intelligence trying to tell us about life.
So true. No one really understands consciousness, no matter what they tell you. They're all arguing about it.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no way to prove anyone's theories.
Well, the greater scientific community would love to prove that exists inside of the brain, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I wish I knew his name. There was this one guy that spent his whole life, he was a brain surgeon, and maybe not a surgeon, but he was a scientist, and his specialty was the brain in some way. And he spent his whole life saying, like, consciousness is just from the brain. I can point it out here, here, and there. And then at the end of his life, he was like, well, that's not true. Too many things are unexplainable with just the brain, and he spent the last part of his life just writing about that. I'll find him. He's Canadian. I'll tell you the name in the next segment because I don't have time right now. But yeah, that guy spent his whole life studying the brain, and towards the end of it, he realized there's way too much that he couldn't explain just from the brain. I just don't believe that everything is just from the brain. Every near-death experience is a reaction to adrenaline because you knew you're dying. I don't believe that. I don't think it's explainable.
Maybe it's a DMT flash.
Well, that's another quote-unquote explanation, but even if you had a DMT flash, would you be able to go visit a family member in another part of the country and they remember the same thing? Even that
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about DMT or how the mind works to really answer that question.
Even if you were able to like meet your sister in another state, have a conversation with her, and then go back into your body, that would just imply to me that it's outside of your brain, even if DMT was involved.
Yeah.
We have a caller on the line. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What is on your mind?
Yes. First off, I wanted to say I really like your show. I've been listening for a long time and don't get a chance to call that much. And
nice.
God, I miss Ian.
Me too.
Probably everybody does. But anyway, I just wanted to call up. I'm a long-time libertarian. Been around for since David Bergland's book, Libertarianism in One Lesson. And can anyone listening? I can't understand how anyone, and I don't please don't accuse me of being a what's the word, a Trump derangement syndrome candidate. But how could anybody, a knowledgeable, sane libertarian, I can't understand how they could support Donald Trump over Chase Oliver. And I kept hearing many libertarians, people that call themselves libertarians, constantly talking about, Trump versus Harris, and talking about this phony poop puppet selection process, and never mentioning Oliver, who, I guess he had a few quirky stances, but I mean, he's so much more. Anybody who thinks that Donald Trump is more of a libertarian than Chase Oliver is a nut in my case, or just ignorant, doesn't understand libertarianism.
I'd like to answer this one if I can. For me, I don't understand how anybody can get to where they call themselves a libertarian, and within 6 months they're still voting at all.
Well, I would like to
Short
answer
answer.
it too, because I am the only person here who voted for Trump, and I am a libertarian. And I think that you're misrepresenting people by saying that basically anyone that I've heard talk about this extensively in lots of different places is claiming that Trump is more of a libertarian than Chase Oliver. I don't know anyone saying that, but the answer to why I personally would support him and not support Chase Oliver is because if Trump wasn't going to do some of the things he was going to do, which was the reason I voted for him, I wasn't going to vote at all because Chase Oliver has no quote-unquote chance to win, and I don't want any of them to quote-unquote rule over me, so what is my real motivation to vote for any of them? And I don't believe that voting is, that is me giving consent to be ruled over by them. I don't believe that either, but it's just...
I don't believe that either.
I would have no motivation to vote at all, even if it was like McAfee, like honestly, like because he just... that's the thing. I think if McAfee was the candidate and he was alive, he would get so much more press, it would be maybe possible for him to win. But it's just impossible for a milquetoast loser like Chase Oliver to win. And I hate everyone who believed in the masking things. And I would never support anyone in anything. I wouldn't, if I had to pick somebody to be my librarian, and one of them was like a pretty crappy Democrat, and they didn't believe in masking, and one of them was like a Republican who agreed with me on most things but also wanted me to mask up for Thanksgiving, I'd vote for the Democrat because that's like a huge issue. That's beyond politics and moving into humanity. He told people that they should be masking up to meet with their family gatherings and putting their mask on in between bites. Truly a flawed human being who has no sense of connection with other people, and that's like voting for a psychopath or just like the biggest loser that you know. And losers who are looking for power are not good people. I don't care what they tell you. And then he went and lied about it. He went on Dave Smith, I think it was Dave Smith's Twitter space, and he said, some people were pointing out this one little thing I said about masking. All I was saying was that I'm not going to let it stop me from eating Thanksgiving dinner with my family. The quote was literally, if people are gathering, okay, I don't have the quote in front of me, but it was so much more than, I was just pointing out that I'm not going to let it stop me from gathering. He mentioned having like a certain number of people. He mentioned masking up between bites and keeping people safe. He's just a liar and a bad person. So if anyone's saying Trump is more of a libertarian than him, maybe they're wrong based on what he purports to believe, but he's also a liar. And the other thing is, I don't think it's unlibertarian to vote because it's not harming anyone else, and I can do anything that's not harming anyone else.
Okay, masking, yes, that's kind of crazy. I agree with you on that issue. But on truly important, I think that, like, foreign policy is a much more important issue than this, the dumb stuff that people say about masking and all that. I agree with you, by the way, on that. But I mean, you've got Oliver. It was a tremendously pro-peace, non-interventionist foreign policy, whereas you have Trump, who was an imperialist warmonger. He continued to support regime change operations all around the planet.
Yeah, he did the jabby jab too.
Assassinations of foreign officials.
The thing
he appointed warmongering deep state swamp creatures. He was going to bomb Mexico for the war. Chase Oliver understands that you have a right to put and a responsibility for whatever you put into your own body in this stinking war on drugs. Trump is just a drug warmonger going back. He's like Dick Nixon.
And so is Kamala.
Focus on the dick. You know what I mean? He's really to me, he was just. And by the way, I'm glad he won over Harris. As bad as he was, at least we'll have some entertainment.
Well, here's the thing: you are talking to us as if the choices were we're about to have Chase Oliver or Donald Trump, or even Chase Kamala or Trump, and that was never ever a reality on this planet ever. That was not close to being reality. The only reality was that Trump or Kamala would win. That was the only remote possibilities. And either way, we're going to have those foreign policies because they're one of the same thing. But this year we learned that they're at least different enough that one of them has had, and I mean the whole branches together. One of them has had power this whole time and hasn't even freed Ross Ulbricht just to say F you to the other side. They could do that so easily. It would be hilarious. And then a lot fewer people would have voted for Trump. And then one of them has the difference in that they will even promise to free Ross at all. So it's all about what could we get out of this, and the fact that there's going to be wars in other countries. We have powerless to stop that this whole time. That's not what voting changed at all.
Yeah, because first off, your one vote is a vote for the ideas. To me, that's what I go out and I don't really not vote. I don't know the guy. I don't know I don't know any of these people at all, but I know what their ideas are, what they purport their ideas are. And Chase Oliver, I mean, he was the only guy that I've heard in a long time, a libertarian or not, that kind of mentioned transparency in government. Like, that's the number one thing. If we had one area that I think that would really work in favor of libertarians would be to inculcate into people the notion of a transparent government. I mean,
Elon Musk is talking about that.
The legitimacy of government is derived through the
and I don't even mean just Doge.
Governed, and you can't give your consent unless you know what's going on.
Elon Musk is definitely a part of voting for Trump, and he has been tweeting things like the government you shouldn't need a FOIA request because the government should tell you everything by default, stuff like that. So the side that had the most
cameras in all of these.
I agree.
This is ridiculous.
I agree. It's definitely ridiculous.
Libertarians talk about these ideas and continuing to support these stinking Democrats and Republicans.
See, you have Trump derangement syndrome because you just listened to me say that the side that won has Elon Musk influencing them and the ability to actually change that, and you're still just angry that Trump won because it's Trump. You obviously don't care about the ideas as much as you care about the people, because I just told you somebody's just gotten into a position of power in the government that has the same ideas. You don't know that Elon... 603-283-6160.
Free Talk Live.
One of the counselor's excuses for her behavior after call accused her of engaging in stealing. This is stealing. You're taking something from somebody who believed they owned something, and by all evidence did own something. You're taking it from them. And as you say, Mark, this goes on all across the country. They're called tax sales or tax deeds. Whenever people drop back in not being able to pay property taxes, in this case, it's because of the down economy. These people are having a tough time. At one point, she got very frustrated, and she said, well, it's not stealing because it's It's the law. So apparently, when the law says you can take something that's not yours, it's not stealing. And now all the law is, as you pointed out, and you talk about the Constitution that's supposed to be the highest law of the land, the law is just words on paper written down by men and women. Some of them signed their names to it, but most of us, in fact 99.999% of us, never signed anything in regards to their laws.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at the week's top stories. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. FSN's Nina Maria Potts has more.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is in its third day and involves an Israeli commitment to withdraw ground troops from Lebanon within 60 days, with a stepped-up presence from the Lebanese army and UN troops monitoring the south. Hezbollah has agreed to keep its fighters out of an area between the Lebanese border with Israel and the Litani River running parallel to it. Meanwhile, there's deepening anxiety over the plight of hundreds and thousands of displaced Palestinians as winter conditions worsen. And there's anxiety over the looming transition of power in Washington, with questions over what a Trump presidency will bring. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
The G7 has condemned Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. It was the final meeting for foreign ministers from the group, which includes the U.S., the UK, and Japan, before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. FSN's Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
In their final statement, the G7 called Russia's use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile earlier this month reckless and escalatory. They also reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, despite fears that the incoming Trump administration in Washington could waver in terms of financial and military backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, the group called on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza and once again accused China of distorting international markets through unfair trade practices, an allegation that Beijing denies. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. Trump also pledged to impose tariffs on Canadian and Chinese imports. FSN's Mitch McCann has more.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. And not your keys, not your Bitcoin is a lesson that too many people have learned the hard way. It's always best to get your crypto into a wallet that you control, but not all wallets are equal. Many of our hosts have been using Edge for years to manage crypto, and there just aren't many wallets to compare. Featuring a unique login system that makes it easier for you to access your crypto from multiple devices, Edge is designed to be user-friendly. In a space that can be notoriously difficult for non-tech people, Edge is a valuable tool for novices and experts alike. You can learn more at edge.app, that's edge.app, which features a link at the top for those who wish to learn more about crypto and wallets. Thanks to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live, and again, to learn more, visit edge.app. With you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Stu.
And Riley.
And Riley, you wanted to give more of your thoughts on what we were talking about last segment.
I did, because...
there was a caller that called in, and he said he's a libertarian, and he wants to be able to wrap his mind around why might a libertarian have voted for Trump over Chase Oliver.
I think the attraction for libertarians to vote for Trump is that he seems to be against the establishment in their minds. And that is appealing to a lot of libertarians, and plus he's promised to commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence on day one, and that's, Ross has been a political prisoner for a long time, and, that appeals to libertarians because they understand who Ross Ulbricht is. They've made friends with Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mom, and, Ross is a story they can get behind, and, when someone promises to commute Ross's sentence, they're going to jump on that bandwagon. Plus, I don't know a lot about Chase Oliver. I didn't know much about him. I could have spent some time looking him up.
He also refused to go on several interviews that he could have totally gone on, like Tim Pool.
Yeah, and that's also not a good look for him either. And I think the frustration for a lot of libertarians is they've been feeling disenfranchised by the system. They've been feeling disenfranchised because, the system doesn't like libertarians or doesn't value their opinions, and they can't get on the stage to, do the debates. And so it's really tough. And I think a lot of libertarians, especially like that last caller, are fed up with, the idea that Trump, who's been in power before, gets another shot at the pie or a piece of the pie when libertarians have never had that chance. And at the same time, the frustration is there. And the thing is, for me, I think the Libertarian Party would do best to stick to principles and finding principled candidates to promote liberty, rather than trying to do milquetoast candidates like Chase Oliver, John Weld, or was it Gary Weld?
Bill Weld and Gary Johnson.
Bill Weld and Gary Johnson. My bad. My mistake.
No, it's okay.
And, these milquetoast candidates, the best candidate the Libertarian Party ever put up was Harry Brown a long time ago, and we need more candidates like him. We need a candidate like a Lysander Spooner or Harry Brown to...
They would definitely do better by sticking a principle. And only for an advertising purpose, to get the ideas into people's mind. The system's so far beyond broken that even... you could put the most principled guy up top and you're not going to see a lot of change. I'm fairly certain.
Oh, yeah. We may not see a lot of change, but at least the party will be going back to principles instead of trying to get popular.
Yep.
Well... I think that the party completely getting destroyed would be probably a good thing, because one thing that I keep seeing right now is people being more concerned with the party itself than like liberty ideas being promulgated in the world. Right now there is this huge argument between libertarians. Is a libertarian who runs as a Republican even a libertarian? And there's one type of argument where you could say, well, if you interact with the system at all, you're not that's more like an anarchist. But anyways, ignoring that, it's more they're asking, well, you're not part of the party. There are literally people out there who think that someone like Ian Freeman running as a Democrat, isn't a libertarian because you didn't run as a libertarian. And it's so counterproductive. The party has been the best CIA tool, whether it is or not, to keep people from actually living like libertarians that I can think of. They think being a libertarian
whether it was designed that way or not. And that's just the nature of what it is. When you form a group, if it gets any sort of popularity, then pretty soon the continuation of the group becomes more important than the reason you started in the first place.
Yeah, that's how people are acting. They think that the party matters
that's how
more
it
than
goes
liberty.
every single time.
I think the concern I have is that, we're having a time when, principles and parties are fighting with each other, and, love and fear and hate and love, they're tools of control and manipulation. They're being used against us by the government or by, forces unknown to us. And this divisiveness has, broken down the the American people, and it's done by design. And so, if we want to get back to, principled libertarians gaining some popularity, then I actually think we should move that direction and find the Harry Browns of the world.
Yeah, I don't think it's a waste of time to run on principled libertarian platform, because it gets those ideas out there in the public.
And
so.
You could do it as a Republican too, though.
Sure,
Right.
you could.
Oh, yeah. I think that's totally valid, especially if you get yourself a position that actually does something like, and they give them weird names like county clerk and stuff like that, or secretary of this or that. But
we do have a caller on the line, so do you want to see what they have to say? An unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh. Well, we were earlier. There was talk about Trump, and I don't know if you were aware that when Trump got into the gambling industry, with his casinos, multiple casinos, including the Taj Mahal down in Atlantic City, he was financed by Rothschild, and they were going to bankrupt him personally, not corporate bankruptcy, where your stuff isn't touched, but he was on the verge of personal bankruptcy, and he was saved by Rothschild. Actually, Wilbur Ross, who worked for Rothschild and was the guy that to come around and say, you're bankrupt, we're taking everything you own. He pulls up to visit Trump, and there was a mob around his car, and he was like amazed. It was like a movie star. And when he talked to the office back home, they agreed that he would be worth more to them not bankrupt than if they personally bankrupt him. And when he became president the first time, he appointed Wilbur Ross as the Secretary of Commerce. You see what I'm saying? He owes himself to Rothschild. And Rothschild, if do you know anything about the Balfour Declaration, where the government of England gave Rothschild the Palestine to resettle with a bunch of his people? Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And if you look at the documentation from that, it looks like Rothschild went ahead and prepared that letter that was sent to him, and went ahead and sent it to the British government for approval, and they just kind of approved it and sent it back to him and said, "Yes, please. We would love the establishment of a Jewish state in the Middle East."
Basically, Israel was set up as a outpost for Rothschild interest in the British Empire, which really we're part of. We're just the thugs that go around the world and serve as cannon fodder for the banksters in the City of London.
It sure seems that way.
The City of London, just 1 square mile, it's like the bankster empire. The Queen of England has to have permission to enter that zone, see? And it's just like the Vatican City. They control the religion, and we over here, Washington, D.C., that's all separate from our government, really. It's like part of a corporation that the British Empire set up, and they keep on doing this, and we just volunteer to go and massacre and kill everybody around the world. I mean, I
don't volunteer for any of that.
Yeah, good. And I wouldn't either, but I saw a lot of people that I knew that died in Vietnam. They were drafting kids that were 18 years old, making them go over there and giving them a gun and then say, go murder people. And what a disaster that was.
Draft dodging is absolutely immoral action.
Over and over. But one other thing, and then I'll stop. What really aggravated me about Trump and his Israeli firster thing now, it seemed like it's a requirement for him to be on his cabinet, to be an Israeli firster. But what irked me is when, do you guys know about the USS Liberty attack where Israel attacked the United States ship?
Yep.
Yeah, I met some of the guys that were on the ship. They came to New Hampshire to testify about it because there was a guy, he put in a thing where he was going to have the state of New Hampshire investigate it, and some survivors came and testified.
Yeah, what an atrocity that was.
I know.
And
no one talks about it.
killing Americans. Yeah, and how that happened, that was a listening ship, a spy ship, and it was out in international waters there in the Mediterranean, and all of a sudden Israel goes and just berserk. And they attacked like Egypt. The planes never even got off the ground. See, so they did all that damage, and then they had all these Egyptian prisoners that were just like, coming out of everywhere, wanting to surrender. So what did they do? They lined them up and had them dig their own graves, and then murdered them. Seriously. And while we were trying to listen to all this, see, they needed the troops up in the Golan Heights. So they transferred the troops up there to Golan Heights, and they took the Golan Heights. And Trump gave Israel, or the thugs that run Israel, the Golan Heights. Like, oh my God, it was occupied territory since, 67 when that happened. How, ignorant, can you be? It cost American lives, that's how they got the Golan Heights, by blowing up the USS Liberty. And they even blew up the life raft, for Christ's sakes. That's how.
Yeah, the USS Liberty was a horrible thing, and people should definitely look into that one.
Mm-hmm. And their own people,
one thing they didn't tell you about in school at all.
Their own higher ups in the military, when they got back to America, the people who survived the USS Liberty attack, all of their higher ups were telling them that didn't happen. Don't talk about it. We forget that ever happened and stuff. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. Well,
yep, and I looked up that bit about Wilbur Ross, and you're totally spot on about that. He is absolutely a Rothschild banker who bailed Trump out.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to be able to tell people when people say, "Oh, well, Trump can't be bought." I've never believed that.
Well, look who he's appointing now. They're all insiders, just like really. Here's Elon Musk, who they're portraying as this big savior that wants to implant a freaking chip in our brains, It's like, come on, guys. This is all set up. All these guys are all set up. We don't get they select for us before we even vote. They own both sides. It's just disgusting.
Hey, I'm on your page, man. I think you said that really well.
You did.
Thanks for letting me go off.
Thank you so much for the call. Very interesting stuff. I did not know that about Trump and the Rothschilds, but it totally makes sense to me.
I think the big concern I have about, the Christians, especially supporting Trump, is that they're being bought by a man who isn't a moral man. Now, I realize he's made some good promises, and I hope he fulfills some of those promises, but he's still not a moral man.
He admits to not being moral. The thing about being moral is having principles that I won't break these principles because I believe in this being right and that being wrong, and I don't want to do wrong. And Trump, in the Joe Rogan interview, days before he got elected, he was saying things like, "Oh, and the congressmen, they'll do anything in order to get ahead. They'll hurt people in order to get ahead. But you know what? I can't blame them. I'd do the same thing if I were them." And I was just like, so you're admitting that you are immoral?
Yeah, he is.
That is just exactly the same thing. That's like saying, well, these people are doing things are bad for money, but I can't blame them. I'd do the same thing. And
I'd be inclined to believe that most Americans think that way, but I would hope that it's not actually true, and that they're just so it's things like that they've been attempting to program people with for a really long time.
I agree.
To act this way when they're not naturally that way.
Mark Passio, he talks about how they're the people who are controlling the planet, and it's not Trump, and it's it might not even be the Rothschilds. It might be higher up than that. But anyway, whoever they are, they have to be psychopaths based on the way they act, not caring for other people. And in order to make other people, like the masses, behave like them, they have to give them their characteristics of being psychopaths. So they program people in school and with TV, etc., to be secondary psychopaths by accepting a worldview that is like a psychopath, because in reality,
that's about right. Yeah,
there's only
accepting that there are people in authority that get to choose what you believe and how you believe it.
Yep. All kinds of things. Like when I was only in 7th grade, it really irritated me how many kids my age didn't care about other humans. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just something that you hear a lot. Like, I remember this girl when I was in 7th grade saying, like, if I could save a human or a puppy, I'd save the puppy. And it was just like, ew to me. And most other people always acted like that. And I saw it because I was homeschooled part of my life. And I swear that makes such a huge difference that I could see where people's worldviews were coming from at all times that were around me, the same age as me, and I saw it in TV all the time.
Yeah, right around 7th grade, I moved from a small town to a big city for the first time, and there was a lot of similar kind of shock when I went to school and saw the kind of things but that's a tough age anyways, because your brain just kind of goes mushy around that age, and then
yeah, it kind of does.
In 3rd grade, when I first
empathy is developed too, and isn't fully formed until sometime in your adult years. But
when I got to 3rd grade, I could just tell, oh, she is acting like that cartoon character. He's acting like that cartoon character, like word for word, repeating things they're saying, and I doubt they even noticed that they're doing it. And with not caring about humans, one thing my dad actually pointed out was that all of the stories, he would get so irritated because, like, think about, like, Toy Story. Of course, there's the owner that owns them. He's just like a dumb kid, Andy. But then all the bad people are humans, and all the good people are toys. And it's like that in, like, so many stories, like Smurfs. All the good people are Smurfs. All the bad people are human.
yeah, Fern Gully.
Yep.
Who?
Oh, you haven't heard of the movie
Fern Gully?
Oh, I was thinking
Yeah, I guess we're a little bit
or whatever.
We're a little bit older.
Oh, that's another show.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, Fern Gully. Yeah, is another
Fern Gully. No.
child's movie where the humans are chopping down the forest and the fairies are the good guys.
Yep, that's just like a huge that's like a common theme in lots of shows is humans bad, and whatever else you have in the show, it's something else. It's like an animal talking like a human. Animals good, humans bad.
Yeah, it's an us versus them mindset, and it becomes rather culty when you think about it, because here we have us as humans, and we're told, oh, you're ruining the planet, we're a virus, we're destroying things, we gotta hate ourselves.
And then you have the guy, the husband of the Queen of England, he said that humans are like a virus, and if he could create a virus that would kill off most of us, he would do it.
Yeah. And, essentially, we wonder why people are having such mental disorders these days, because they're taught to hate themselves. They're taught to see themselves as the victim. Oh, we're so victimized. We're victims of racism, or I feel so bad for being cis male or have so much privilege. I mean, okay, if you feel bad, you have so much privilege. Maybe you should actually give some of that privilege to me.
Yeah, and not just that, but it's no wonder all the psychological problems people have with invisible enemies like COVID and terrorism, and even like scary drugs. They've been having a war on that for a long time that has been pretty much fruitless if you think it was for what it was.
Yeah, and shockingly enough, drugs keep winning the war on drugs.
And it's really frustrating to me. I don't know if I've said this with you guys on the show yet, but one thing that really frustrates me is there's this conversation recently. So in 2020, Oregon legalized most drugs, pretty much legalized them, basically relaxed the drug laws there a lot. And now you hear all the time about how horrible Portland is, like, oh my God, there's just naked people in the streets, killing people with knives, just like really bad stuff there. It's really dangerous and gross stuff going on there, like every single day. The thing is, people are making this argument that, oh, well, see, that's why we shouldn't have legalized drugs. But they're acting like it just happened in a vacuum. Like it happened, like if that was happening in some place like, I don't know, let me think of a really good example. Like if that was happening in Vermont, or let's say New Hampshire. If that was happening in New Hampshire, I think that it would be a stronger case that just legalizing drugs is bad. But there, they have horrible gun laws. You can't own a gun to protect yourself, so somebody doesn't have to feel in that much danger if they want to walk around naked in front of people's kids or anything where they would normally have to feel like, oh, I could have a repercussion for this, because no one around them has guns. They can go around killing people, stealing.
Coastal Oregon is so screwed up with all their programs to incentivize homelessness and
That too.
whatnot. Like
A lot of people are on welfare there. The government is so massively providing handouts that it's so easy to incentivize lazy drug users.
Yeah, they've been working on this for years too, like way back since times were almost somewhat kind of normal.
So what else would you expect if none of that got fixed and the first thing they do is slap, legal drugs? See what I'm saying? Like, it's not a one-to-one comparison of if Keene, New Hampshire had murder problems suddenly because we legalized drugs.
Yeah,
Because
it's a false correlation.
It is.
Yep.
And it really is really irritating to see because the war on drugs, it doesn't need more people backing it. And I just have been noticing this strong push back towards, like, quote, law and order. Bunch of people I know in my life going back towards American Christianity and things like that. It's like they're like, I see all this chaos. I need someone to tell me what's right. And it's the worst thing you could possibly do is ask somebody to tell you what's right.
You shouldn't outsource your own spiritual knowledge or your own spiritual sovereignty to a man in a suit or a woman in a suit with a title. It's up to you to figure out what God is and how to connect with God. And I realize, Christianity might be a vehicle for a while, but, at some point you got to step out of the vehicle and realize, you know what? I'm a spiritual sovereign being. I need to think for myself and question authority.
And if you can't get all the way there on yourself and need help, that's fine too. But it should probably be somebody you know, or at least go through a bunch of sources and just don't be like, oh, this is who everybody agreed should be telling me what to do, and then listen to them.
Absolutely.
That's an appeal to authority and is a logical fallacy.
Have you started reading a bunch of, like, just books yourself? That's where you should start. You shouldn't start by just going to somebody's podcast and listening to what they think of the books they've read.
Yeah,
you can
read
do
the
it
book.
yourself.
I started with a book. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else, though. It was Henry Kissinger's World Order. It was just horrible. If you got to read it, find a way to steal a copy or something.
Wait, why did you read his book?
Oh, just because I was, when I was still, like, just kind of decided I wanted to figure out what government was all about.
Oh, I see.
This is probably around 2014 or something.
Well, he's definitely somebody that was, like, behind what was going on in government his whole life without having ever been, elected by anyone. Or...
Yeah, it was full of nonsense, in case anybody was wondering.
Probably lies.
And I found a whole bunch of good information in the podcasting app on my telephone, which was really good for me. So
yeah. Well, I'm not saying podcast bad, books good. What I meant was, like, getting somebody's opinions on stuff that you could read yourself.
I didn't mean books bad either. Books are great.
Yeah.
If you don't have time, though, podcasts are good.
One thing I think is just that, like, we live in a time where there's so much information that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't even know where to start. I think somebody should just tell me, and it's lazy, and it's really sad because it's like only 50 years ago people didn't have such this much information just at the tip of their finger, so easy to get.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
people
if you
are
really want to
it.
start, you'll find out where to start on your own.
So 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. We've had some really good calls tonight. Interesting stuff. More Free Talk Live coming up. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power, but there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at the week's top stories. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. FSN's Nina Maria Potts has more.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is in its third day and involves an Israeli commitment to withdraw ground troops from Lebanon within 60 days, with a stepped-up presence from the Lebanese army and UN troops monitoring the south. Hezbollah has agreed to keep its fighters out of an area between the Lebanese border with Israel and the Litani River running parallel to it. Meanwhile, there's deepening anxiety over the plight of hundreds and thousands of displaced Palestinians as winter conditions worsen. And there's anxiety over the looming transition of power in Washington, with questions over what a Trump presidency will bring. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
The G7 has condemned Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. It was the final meeting for foreign ministers from the group, which includes the U.S., the UK, and Japan, before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. FSN's Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
In their final statements, the G7 called Russia's use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile earlier this month reckless and escalatory. They also reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, despite fears that the incoming Trump administration in Washington could waver in terms of financial and military backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, the group called on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza and once again accused China of distorting international markets through unfair trade practices, an allegation that Beijing denies. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. Trump also pledged to impose tariffs on Canadian and Chinese imports. FSN's Mitch McCann has more.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We close the week out with the end of an icon. It was announced this week that the world-famous Smithfield Meat Market in London is to close permanently after 850 years in business. For Londoners, it is news that is as jarring as the closure of the Covent Garden Fruit and Vegetable Market back in 1974, and it had only been running for 3 centuries.
It's alive with meat traders selling their meat, and it's just the most wonderful place, and to visit it is an experience of a lifetime.
Peter Twist leads tours of the market and is an official guide with the City of London.
The market's been in those fabulous buildings for the best part of a century now, and they're just tired and not big enough. And most important, of course, the meat comes from lorries, and so at night you've got lorries coming from Poland, from Ireland, from Scotland, from Wales, and it's just a terrible traffic jam. You've got to visit it at night, round about midnight when it starts trading, or at the very latest, about 7 o'clock in the morning when we do our tours. and you can look at all the meat. You can see what the prices are like, which are eye-watering, cheaper than they would be in a supermarket. And it's just full of tradition and full of very interesting meat traders who have worked there all their lives, generation after generation.
Your time to take a tour is running out. The market will conduct its last trading day in 2028. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The week's top stories again. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. The G7 condemns Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. And Mexico's president threatens to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitz.
I know I shouldn't, but these muffins are delicious.
And we'll share our favorite recipes later in the hour. But first, our guest says, don't give in to road rage. Stay calm behind the wheel and coolly plot your road revenge. Danny Preston is a defensive driving instructor who teaches people how to control their temper behind the wheel. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks for having me.
Danny, there's nothing I hate more than getting cut off.
That drives me nuts. I want to scream out my window.
Getting into an argument with a stranger isn't going to accomplish anything but stress you out.
Well, how should you respond instead?
In 1996, some guy gave me the middle finger after I cut him off. I recognized him from TV. That's when I decided to become a defensive driving instructor, developing the skills I needed to eventually be invited on his show as an expert. Now, once you're there, it's just a simple matter of switching out his muffins with the ones you made yourself. How many did you eat?
What? I don't know.
Thank you so much for sharing your tips, Danny.
Danny is not my true name.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project with a decentralized, autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Stu.
And Riley. I've noticed the price of Dash has kind of exploded lately.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's like $40 a Dash right now.
What did it used to be?
I've seen it around $20, $30, so it's gone up quite a bit.
It peaked out at 1,000 in case anybody was wondering. I just know that because that was $1 million masternode.
Wow.
It went all the way up to 1,000 per one Dash. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
When was that? Like 2021 or something?
No, I think that was like 17 when everything was going nuts.
That's interesting. Like I didn't know it had gone that high. I guess I figured it may have gone to 200, but 1,000? Wow.
That is crazy.
Yep, I remember $1 million masternodes.
Wow.
Well, one of the things we were going to talk about on the show that's in the news, and definitely the callers that called in have like touched on this exact topic, is Elon Musk. He is probably I've always said that I am sketchy on him. Like, I don't completely think, oh, he is great, but he is saying he'll do great things. And I'm smart enough to know that that doesn't mean he's going to do great things.
Right. He still is a welfare whore in a way.
Yeah, he has his corporations, and if you have a corporation, you're asking for protection from the government.
Yeah.
And I think I just don't know enough about it. Like, I know that he also has just gotten like some kind of like loans he didn't have to pay back.
Yeah, if somebody asked me what the business was that he was in, I would say it was mixing, what do they say, public-private partnerships.
Yeah, it does seem like that's...
Which is a fancy way to say fascism.
Yep, it does seem like that's what all of his companies are involved with. Like, everybody who's a corporation is in some sense, because you have to become a corporation, and then you're telling the government, okay, yes, I will follow your edicts if you protect me.
Corporation is a government-created thing.
But he's gone an extra mile from my understanding, just from hearing mostly like Arya talk about this, another host of the show. But I just don't know the details, so I just wanted to point that out. So he's got that going for him. The other thing is, well, he took over Twitter and did plenty of good things. Like right now, I haven't been like, getting kicked off Twitter half as much as before. Annoying that you still can't say faggot, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's still not a free speech 100% platform like social.freetalklive is, but, it might be a little better than when the leftists were censoring you for certain speech about the COVID pandemic.
Well,
right.
they can't set him up as your hero type if it doesn't do anything good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so true. And one thing I know about him is that he knows more than he's, like, willing to act like he knows about. Like, he posted this picture, and man, I wanted to look up the name for this little object, but I didn't before the show. But here's what I'm trying to say. He posted this picture that just said, "My bedside table," and it had a gun on his bedside table, so people all were, like, focused on that, like, oh, is this a threat to somebody? Was somebody threatening him? So he posted this to say, like, hey, I have a gun on me. More importantly, there was this little device sitting on the table next to the gun that is this little thing that if you're holding it in the middle, both sides have, it like protrudes on both sides. It's like a stick, but decorative. And each side has like a little, it gets a little bigger out on the outside. It's almost like holding an hourglass, and you're holding the skinny middle part.
Okay.
And then it's bigger on both sides. And that little device is pictured in all kinds of Indian and Egyptian ancient myths with like their gods holding it and making electricity come out of it. And so, that's what it looks like in like hieroglyphs and stuff.
Interesting.
And then he named his business Tesla, and his mom looks like a tranny. And I really just think that he is part of quote unquote them, and he's one of the knowledge hoarding freaks. And I don't like him. I don't like the way he looks and talks. I feel like he is a fake person, and the fact he is glomming onto stuff like posting Mises or whatever just creeps me out, really. Because I have been saying, me and some of my other friends are free staters that aren't always on the show. We were talking about this at Liberty Forum. We were like, my prediction is that this is one huge thing. I'm like a celebrity culture follower in a way, because I feel like it gives you so much info on like what they're doing next, what's coming out next. Like they start talking about it in just like entertainment first. And so what I was going to say was, I think that they're going to start like, I think they're going to start copying libertarians. Everyone else is just like a monolith, boring. If you make a character on a TV show about a normal person nowadays, what can you even make interesting about them? We are the only people that are interesting at all. And I said all that stuff. I have so many conspiracies.
I think so too. But mine's like even a little more conspiratorial, I guess, because I don't think it'll be to the end of liberty. I think it'll be to Hegelian dialectic, to where they point to where they're letting libertarians try their ideas.
I think the same.
And then they'll make everything go really bad.
I was not saying that I think that's going to be a good end for libertarianism at all. I would think exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
They want people to believe that their characters are this like interesting, thinks a little differently than everyone else, like almost like everyone we know. And then not only we, because we're such a minority, why would they even care if we were interested in them? But like libertarians are interested in these people, and then also like, well, you're not going to be interesting if you're saying the same stuff all of the other like plebes are saying. So interesting to them too. In fact, like Republicans, they they're really interested in what libertarians have had to say ever since COVID, because they're like, hey, wait, I'm just now catching on. Something ain't right here. They're closing our churches, and they're really slow to figure it out. But
Well, there was so much mess going on with the whole medical tyranny thing.
Oh, there was. And, the people, there was some definite pushback from the people at some point, but they were closing churches, and church leaders came out in support of the vaccine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm amazed at how much pushback there wasn't, because everywhere you look, there was fraud and deception abounding. Like there was Fauci was saying that the mask is good, and then he was saying the mask isn't necessary, and then he was saying that it's definitely necessary. You might want to wear two.
And at one point he said you have to cover your eyes to be really safe, like wear goggles and a mask.
Yep, and banning drugs at work and promoting drugs that'll probably kill you, and then if you look into the origin of it, they totally made the thing anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much any aspect of that story you started to look at, there were contradictions aplenty.
So I just think that, Republicans, after all of the crap that we've went through before COVID, Patriot Act didn't wake them up, but...
And the war with
COVID
Iraq didn't wake them up.
Yeah, but the COVID stuff started to, quote-unquote, wake them up a bit. But when you don't have, principles, you can't wake up. You're oh, I now see things, but you just, you're not all the way woken up because you don't know the basics of reality yet. And so I think they did that on purpose. I think they purposely pushed such leftism that some Republicans are quote-unquote somewhat waking up, because they want the Republicans to be asking for more freedom, but they didn't teach them what freedom really was, so they can put someone like Elon Musk out there, and then it's just the bait for them. They're like,
Sure.
yeah, this is exactly, I like Rothbard too now.
Yeah, I think the ideas of libertarianism are going to catch on to some people, just like Stu said, and then, they're going to turn it against the liberty-minded people eventually, because, that's what they do. And my question for you, Bonnie, is what would a properly woken up person be like, in your opinion?
Somebody that no matter what the situation is, they can tell what is right and what is wrong.
I think that's a good definition.
Yeah, somebody who doesn't lie to themselves about the nature of reality.
Yeah, that's a great definition.
I think it's hard to always live by your principles, and so you try every day. You're gonna make mistakes and get back up, and that's fine. But the important thing is to try and live by those principles no matter what.
When I was a kid, I read 1984 because I grew up like a Republican. I always knew oh, that's a book that's important. We should definitely read it. Everybody should read that book. I read it, and halfway through, I closed it and all frustrated feeling, and I was thinking, how am I supposed to, if I'm in Winston's situation, how am I supposed to know, he did, that, oh, what's happening is wrong and I need to do something about it? How would I even know? And that irritated me for a really long time, and it's a really good push I had, because I wanted to be able to, no matter what the situation was, be doing the right thing and know if someone is doing something wrong to me, know if the government is doing something wrong to me, and also know what's right and where to go.
Yeah, I always had a strong natural aversion to being tricked. I think that's why I was never good at school, because I knew that was one big trick. Even though I could do I was good at spelling, I could do math when I felt like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I had no learning problems. I just was not good at the obedience training part of it.
I wasn't even one of those kids. I was somebody who really liked school, and I would say even in high school, I would have liked it more if it wasn't for just I felt like everybody around me was dumb and they didn't want to teach us anything important by high school. But in elementary school, I was all with the obedience programming, and it's just that I can remember it. It's once I realized what it was, I'm fine now. You know what I mean? So I feel like some people, they don't even remember what happened, but I just have a crazy good memory too. So I think that really helps me. I don't know. There was a host that was telling me if you're using social media, you're getting programmed because it's so insidious. You can't possibly not be getting programmed. And I was just I just don't think I am, because everything I see, I think about it. The way you get programmed is you get into an unconscious state. And then when you're in your unconscious unconscious state, you let people tell you what is right, how to feel, blah, 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 whatever it is that they're programming you with. And I don't think it's just like the human is not strong enough to avoid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this notion of intellectual self-defense was first brought to my mind by Richard Grove in the Peace Revolution podcast. And the universal key for that is what they call the trivium method, which is just a way to remove contradictions from. So you study the field of everything you can find, and you just look at what contradicts and take that out, and you're left with the best picture of the truth.
I really need to figure out exactly how to do the trivium method. I've listened to like several podcasts about it, and I guess there's just so much to learn that it kind of made me just like, so look at things from the logical perspective and see how you feel about it. That's kind of what I've been doing.
Well, no, that's sort of a different thing. With trivium, it's a 3-step process: grammar, logic, rhetoric. And
input,
the grammar is
process,
yeah,
output.
That's another way to say it. So the grammar is what exists, or that's the input part, and then the logic is that's the processing part, right? So that's where you remove the contradictions, and the rhetoric is kind of that's your pool of useful information that's left over, and so that's your actable information, or what you do with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that is important for some people to hear, because I don't know that people contemplate enough.
A lot of people, I mean, the reason why we don't contemplate enough is because we have a lot of distractions. We've got YouTube, we got Facebook, we got everything to distract us, and so we rarely sit and contemplate things going on in our lives.
Well, the concept I just went over should have been drilled into our brains by the time we were 4, but it's a completely alien concept to most adults. And you wonder why everybody's all like confused about what exists and what doesn't.
I guess one thing that confused me about it is it doesn't to me have good enough instructions, because I guess I've just always done that. Like, I hear something, I contemplate it, and then I have what I think about it. I don't know don't most people do that? Or is that not true? I know some people don't have internal dialogues, apparently.
No, I think it's just that they miss the part that a contradiction is always a mistake or a lie. They don't exist in nature; they're always man-made. So, if you see two factual pieces of information that are exclusive to each other, so only one can be true, then you gotta look for the clues that point to which one of those is true, because one of them isn't for certain. And it might even be possible that both aren't, but if you have a contradiction, there's some mistake or lie.
Interesting. I think that just that one sentence it tells someone more what to do than like just telling them, oh, well, do the trivium. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to look at things. Like, a lot of people don't get told that contradictions are bad because they were raised Christian, and we keep bring that up today, but I don't know why. It's just kind of...
Well, Christianity and religion have been hot topics here on the show because, we're part of a church. And I think religion and discussing religion are important to us as a church because, we are here to talk about what we believe is the truth and how to get to that truth. And so, that is our mission, is to spread peace, love, and liberty. And we talk about religion because a lot of religions don't believe in peace, love, and liberty. They may talk about peace and love through Jesus Christ, but they don't talk about liberty.
If my God tells me to kill a people, I'll do it.
Yeah, they advocate for genocide. They advocate for, violence against various groups of people like homosexuals because they're deviant sinners.
Yeah, it's
things
fine
like
because
that.
they weren't following God's will.
Exactly.
Yep, and that's a good example of a contradiction where you have, the scriptures tell you that God is kind and loving, and then you have your church leaders that tell you, we need to go to war with the other, or whatever the case may be. That's a contradiction, so only one of those could be true.
The issue for me is whether truth exists, and there definitely is truth that exists, and getting to that truth involves a lot of work and involves deconstructing everything you've been taught, and somewhere along the way you're going to find out what you think is the truth, And the best way to really test it is to go out and apply the knowledge that you've gained about what you think is true.
I think that is a great way to explain the grammar. It's like your actions in the world, and does it see how your output, see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you advocate for responsibility, then you should be responsible. If you're advocating that people should, live free and live their lives to the best, according to the dictates of their own conscience, then do so. But if you're just going to preach about it, your preaching isn't going to amount to anything until you're actually living that way. That's why Ian is such a good example to a lot of us, is because he's living the way he believes is right.
Yeah, that's so true.
He's in prison for living the way he thought was right. He's in prison because people didn't like the way he was living.
And what's so funny is so many people that hate Ian are like, haha, he's in prison now. And he's more happy and content in prison than those people are in their regular lives with their families.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
And, that's a good example to all of us, because if I were in prison, I'd be terrified, I'd be depressed, I'd feel lonely, I'd feel isolated, I'd hate every minute of it, it'd be absolutely miserable for me. But Ian is like, oh, well, my body is in prison, my mind is not, I can still do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an inspiration daily to me.
Me too. It's insane to witness. I just don't know anyone else like him. It's kind of funny because today I was on the phone with my sister Elsbeth, and I was telling her, well, I think Jesus was just a person that was way different than everybody else around him, and was earnestly trying to know the truth and probably trying to teach it to people. And I said, and I know that there are people like that are just born kind of thinking differently than everyone else, because that's what Ian is like.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because he doesn't like to be compared to Jesus.
I'm not surprised.
Mark likes to compare him to a space alien.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say Mark also likes to compare him to Jesus because he's like, what are you doing trying to be a martyr? And he's not, so.
Yeah, he likes to compare him to Jesus in not so positive ways, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also sometimes a space alien.
Yep.
Isn't Mark the intergalactic space king? Or did he resign?
That makes a lot of sense why he wants to be a space king if he thinks Ian is the alien.
Yeah, he wants to rule and reign over Ian.
Well, speaking of someone else who it seems like wants to rule over us without being elected, and it's really creeping me out. I think the worst one, the creepier one, is RFK. I'm not gonna lie. There's something like I trust even less about him. But it's Elon Musk. So Musk unleashes online army of federal workers. Okay, yeah. He unleashed his army of followers on federal workers. A tough way to find out she's losing her job. As Trump efficiencies are, the billionaire is targeting employees by name on X, which is also known as Twitter, sparking pushback. It says, as co-director of President-elect Donald Trump's new Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk has wasted no time posting to his 205 million followers on X about specific government departments he views as bloated. But this week, Musk has escalated from targeting government agencies to singling out individuals, sparking his online army of followers to launch blistering critiques of ordinary federal employees. What does that even mean, ordinary federal employees? Like,
that's a public position. You can put yourself out there.
Right. They wrote the word ordinary to try to make it seem like, oh, well, they're just innocent little people. They have a job that is, first of all, public and must be transparent.
Right.
And second of all, stealing from people to have the job.
That's the way we view it. We view the people in government as stealing from hardworking people. But most people don't see it that way, though. Most people see them as servants to the public, but they're not serving the public, they're serving the government.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
No, they're mostly serving themselves. They do it for the paycheck primarily.
Yeah.
And then they trick themselves into, I'm doing it for the cause secondarily, I think.
They're doing it for the paycheck primarily in their lives, but what they're doing helps the government as a whole the most, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Helps the people, not like the least, if any at all, because even if something that you're doing while you're employed with the government technically helps somebody, like, oh, you're with search and rescue, well, that job could be done in the private sector without stealing from people for cheaper and probably done better. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live. Don't go anywhere, more coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at the week's top stories. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. FSN's Nina Maria Potts has more.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is in its third day and involves an Israeli commitment to withdraw ground troops from Lebanon within 60 days, with a stepped-up presence from the Lebanese army and UN troops monitoring the south. Hezbollah has agreed to keep its fighters out of an area between the Lebanese border with Israel and the Litani River running parallel to it. Meanwhile, there's deepening anxiety over the plight of hundreds and thousands of displaced Palestinians as winter conditions worsen. And there's anxiety over the looming transition of power in Washington, with questions over what a Trump presidency will bring. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
The G7 has condemned Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. It was the final meeting for foreign ministers from the group, which includes the U.S., the UK, and Japan, before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. FSN's Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
In their final statements, the G7 called Russia's use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile earlier this month reckless and escalatory. They also reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, despite fears that the incoming Trump administration in Washington could waver in terms of financial and military backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, the group called on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza and once again accused China of distorting international markets through unfair trade practices, an allegation that Beijing denies. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. Trump also pledged to impose tariffs on Canadian and Chinese imports. FSN's Mitch McCann has more.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. We have some callers online. and we're going to get to you in a second, but Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Stu.
And Riley.
And we have an unscreened caller on the line, so I'm just going to go to the phones. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
You know, you guys talk about people fooling themselves, but aren't you guys fooling yourselves about two things? You know, I've created a new analogy. I call it the Skeeter Plantation. You guys familiar with the Jones Plantation analogy?
Yeah, I don't remember. You can go ahead and explain it to the viewers because I haven't watched that ever and haven't had it explained to me in a while, but I remember knowing it before.
It's the false analogy that these slaves are victims to this white guy who owns a plantation named Jones, right?
So can you explain it exactly how it's supposed to be understood and not just like make a stupid criticism about it? Because otherwise we can't have a conversation about it where the callers are understanding, just like you call and be like, blah, 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 this specific aspect of Austrian economics, and no one listening cares. It's bad radio and I'll hang up on you.
There's like so I don't know, does someone want to explain it better than me? There's this white plantation owner named Jones, right? He has a bunch of slaves and he lets them go. He says, you're free to leave. Bye, Felicia. But if you choose to stay, you got to pay taxes. And they
That's
choose
not
to stay.
entirely a good representation of it.
Can you explain it then, Riley?
Sure, I can explain it a lot better than Skeeter can. So the idea of the Jones Plantation is this. So Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith both own plantations, and Mr. Smith has really well-behaved slaves, apparently, and Mr. Jones is like, how do you get your slaves to behave? And, well, Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith come to an agreement. They say, well, we're going to tell the slaves that they get to vote on who gets to be their master. And so they hold the election, and, Mr. Jones will be the master one moment, and Mr. Smith will be the master next moment, and, these people will get to choose. And, things seem to go fine, and all of a sudden they get to this point in the story where they realize, oh, we're all slaves here, as one of the slaves gets beaten to death for questioning some rules.
But you missed the part where he let them go, right? Didn't you?
I mean, I guess they were told they were free, but they weren't exactly free.
Yeah.
Now were they?
Yeah, they were.
No, no, they weren't free.
When did they get? Tell me, Riley. When did they gain rights to the Jones's plantation?
They didn't.
Where was that part? I missed it. They never had the right to the Jones plantation. He was kind enough to give it to them on the condition that it was ruled democratically, right?
According to the story, sure, right. But here's the thing you're missing, Skeeter. You don't. Oh, hold on, dude. All you do is cackle and laugh like a maniac. Are you on your meds tonight?
Well, that's something that stupid people, especially people in crowds, like to do. They think that bolsters their point. Okay, bye. So that's what people like to do. I don't have any way to actually back up what I'm saying, so I'm going to use it's very feminine, we're laughing at you, so we're right, and lawyers do it.
Oh, of course they do. Laughing at someone makes you seem like you're cool and trendy, but you really don't have an argument if you're just laughing at somebody. And, Skeeter accused Bonnie of doing an ad hominem. What about his straw man argument earlier about the Jones plantation?
Yeah, he didn't want to actually explain it in a way where, let's explain exactly what Larkin Rose, that's him that made that, right?
Yep. What
Larkin Rose meant, and then we'll explain how something is different and how he's wrong, blah, blah. So he didn't even want to start from the beginning being honest.
And I haven't watched the Jones Plantation in a while, so I can't remember it exactly.
And if we're not going to explain it to the listeners and then talk about it in a way that's interesting, I'm just going to hang up on him. He's so boring. The other thing is just I've said it to him a million times. No person legally owns and rightfully owns the land that is the United States. A group of people claim to be in control of it, and it's by force. So it therefore is not rightful just because they wrote down that it's, quote, legal.
Exactly. And, people say that, this government is doing legal things. No. They're pretending they're doing legal things in the name of liberty, in the name of justice, in the name of whatever cause they want to do, because it's all about control.
One man named Jones could understandably, conceptually own a property that is a plantation, like that size. That's totally possible. And then that person could rent things out, and you could say, oh, he's renting that out to you. Ultimately, he owns it. But that's not the same situation as what we have with the United States. The United States is a nebulous group that you can't point to one person, so there's no responsibility there. And the only reason that they claim to have any ownership over your land is because they'll kill you.
Yeah, and they change the rules as they go, so that anytime you start to get ahead, they just change the rules and squash you right back down.
And if you do that, what you're explaining with a contract, it's not a contract. If we write a contract down and then if I don't like how things are going, I go and change what it says that the contract you signed, not that we signed any contract, well, then it's not a valid contract, and it's the same thing with any agreement.
Yeah, if we sat down and played a game of Monopoly and I decided that I got to change the rules whenever I feel like it, you guys probably wouldn't have very much fun.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be fair. It would, if you won, it would be not right. So, anyways.
Yeah, that's why I'm not against rules. I'm just against illegitimate rulers.
Yeah, people who claim the monopoly privilege on ruling you without your consent.
Especially if you agree to the rules. The idea that there will ever be like a constitution and 330 million people all agree to the rules of it, that's not going to happen because it's not possible. And besides, even if it was possible that 330 million people agreed to some rules, as soon as those people have kids, it's illegitimate. It's not,
if I can consent to something and to doing something, I should be able to withdraw my consent just as easily.
Yeah, that I agree.
I shouldn't have to go through an attorney to have my consent withdrawn or demand it withdrawn in a letter. I should be able to say, I'm no longer consenting to you ruling me.
Yeah, just alert it to
there.
someone, not ask for permission to withdraw your consent. So, in the last segment, we started talking about this story from the Wall Street Journal, and they are talking about how Elon Musk has been sicking his followers, which even that in and of itself is debatable. Like, there's always this idea like, oh, this bigger creator mentioned me negatively. They're just sicking their followers at me, and now I'm getting death threats. And I'm always like, I have no sympathy for people who act like that. It's just like, you're on the internet, they're on the internet. If somebody else mentions you and then you get haters, well, you just got a whole bunch more followers, so it's so stupid. I mean, it's one thing if somebody goes on the internet and says, everyone, go here and tell Riley he's an idiot. That's one thing. And it's another thing if you just interact with an account and then, or the account talks about your account and then people of their own volition go and interact with your account. That's a huge thing I hear about all the time, where people are like, oh, this bigger creator is using their privilege, basically, to send followers at me. Well, it's the internet. So they're claiming that Elon Musk is sending his followers at specific employees. It says Musk has escalated from targeting government agencies on his X account to singling out individuals, sparking his online army of followers to launch. See, they're already trying to make it sound violent, like army.
Yeah.
Sparking his online army of followers to launch blistering critiques at ordinary federal employees.
Oh, those poor employees.
Yeah, they're just ordinary.
Oh, so that would have some legitimacy if he ramped up a whole bunch of chat bots to do the job. But if these are actual accounts with real people behind them,
just deciding to do it themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
So one recent post by the billionaire zeroed in on Ashley Thomas, a little-known director of climate diversification. Sounds like she needs to be well-known. Director of Climate Diversification at the U.S. International Development Finance Corp.
Well, you can't get rid of that. That's how we get different weather. Holy cow.
Yeah. That's so stupid.
It is. It's really strange.
After another user on Musk's social media platform X questioned her role, Musk's repost, he wrote so many fake jobs. So like on Twitter, somebody can post something, then Musk or anyone else is able to go and repost it with a comment. So he reposted it and said, so many fake jobs. Oh, they're taking away my language from me. He retweeted it. And he wrote so many fake jobs, talking about Ashley Thomas's job of Director of Climate Diversification.
Wow.
So it garnered 32 million views, triggering an avalanche of memes and ridicule from his followers against the employees, such as, sorry, Ashley Thomas, gravy train is over. Oh my god, how did she survive?
I don't know. That sounds horrifying.
Memes, an avalanche of memes. How can she literally breathe right now?
I guess she's so afraid of freedom of speech advocates doing freedom of speech things.
Yeah, this is ridiculous from Wall Street Journal here. They're really trying to make it sound like it's like somehow violence happened to this woman. It's like maybe the Director of Climate Diversification at the U.S. International Development Finance Corp, or corporation, I guess you'd say, needs to be more well known, because I have never heard of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, or
me neither.
Her job title or her name, Ashley Thomas. Yeah, it sounds like she's probably sitting there collecting a paycheck for doing a bunch of crap.
She probably doesn't do anything.
Right, a bunch of government employees don't do anything. Me and my dad were on the phone the other day just talking about where we used to live in Utah, Dugway Proving Ground, and all these people that do next to nothing, literally next to nothing. And some of them are like, well, there's 2 people that sit at the office of blah, 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 and do the same job, and it could easily be done by one. If nothing else, if you changed nothing else, it could easily be done by one person instead of 2. And tons of other examples like that. And plus they're doing nothing, and if you ask them for help with something, it's like, oh my god, I guess I have to get up and find the rule book or whatever.
Oh, I wonder if that's who names tropical storms so that they're properly diverse.
Maybe.
Is that what they did?
No, I don't know. It's just speculation. I can't imagine that job actually does anything.
Climate diversification, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that... I was wondering the same thing. What does that actually do? Does it diversify the climate?
Yeah.
Maybe this will get into it, but I bet that they won't get into it, because then they'd have to explain why that's really necessary, and Elon Musk shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
So it says earlier this month, in a move heralded by many of his supporters, Trump tapped Musk and biotech company founder Vivek Ramaswamy to spearhead Doge, sharing its name with a Musk-promoted cryptocurrency, to slash spending regulations and restructure federal agencies. So it's the Department of Government Efficiency. We've talked about it on the show before. And it says, in a Wall Street Journal opinion piece Wednesday, the 2 men envisioned mass headcount reductions across the federal bureaucracy. That's just great. On Wednesday, Musk shared on X a past TV interview with Milton Friedman, in which the economist recommended the elimination of a number of federal agencies, including the Departments of Education, Commerce, Agriculture, and Housing and Urban Development.
Ooh, especially HUD, yes.
Oh.
They have been a major outflow of misplaced funds.
What do they do?
That's the Housing and Urban Development. They do government programs for housing loans, and
don't they also do Section 9 housing?
Yeah, and they'll buy
Section 8,
properties for the purpose of, I don't know, making it fair for people to get into properties. You can see how well that's worked out.
So basically just controlling the market in a way it probably doesn't need to be and make things worse.
Its actual function has been to siphon out a whole bunch of money out the back door of America without Americans knowing about it. If you want to know more about that, look up Catherine Austin Fitts. She'll tell you all about that. She used to work there.
Catherine Austin Fitts?
Yes. She does a thing now called the Solari Report. Solari, Solari.
Interesting. Never heard of her.
Yeah, she's got a lot of good information.
I've heard of her. She's been on Coast to Coast AM a few times with George Noory.
Yeah, probably.
Interesting. It says that whenever Musk posted or retweeted that Milton Friedman post, he wrote, Milton Friedman was the best, in apparent agreement. Ramaswamy in interviews has offered an unusually blunt and likely impossible to implement strategy for how to slash the federal workforce. If it's impossible, that's just showing more of what the problem is. It shouldn't be impossible if the government gets way too bloated to cut it down. It shouldn't be impossible that if people are spending money, taxpayers are spending money on something that isn't necessary, it shouldn't be impossible to cut down what's unnecessary. Like, that should give you...
Yeah, that seems like a silly concept, doesn't it?
It is, and it should give you a hint as to...
How could we ever stop paying ourselves out of the stolen plunder to do nothing?
Yeah, I feel like whoever wrote this has an agenda. It says, Ramaswamy in interviews, the likely impossible to implement strategy for how to slash the federal workforce, firing those whose social security numbers start with or end with odd numbers. Boom, that's a 75% reduction done. Let me think, okay.
That's one way to do
it. He said on a podcast interview this fall.
And then you can go after the even number ones.
Yeah, then go after all the even numbers and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is there 75%? Oh, I see, because start with or end with would get you more. Okay, interesting. It says both leaders, which is like, why are they leaders? You know, they're not elected to anything right now.
Who's it calling leaders?
Elon and Ramaswamy.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. I guess it's a way of programming the people to think that they're so-called leaders.
Also, it's funny that the first move you make towards government efficiency is by making a new government department.
Yep. I mean, it could. The thing is, that's the argument for it is, well, if you add 1 but subtract 1,000, then it's more efficient. But it's a good question.
Wouldn't you just make a private program to do it?
I don't know. It might be that the private program isn't able to do that. I don't know.
I don't know. I heard Trump has a lot of money. Why can't he just pay some guys to pick out who needs to go and then Trump fires them? He's good at firing people. I saw that show.
I don't know if there's something where he isn't able to just fire them. I just don't know. That's just a
I was just
question.
pointing out some contradictions I see.
So we do have a caller on the line, Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Sarah, what's on your mind?
Yes, I heard in the news there's a state up in the New England area. They're going to ban smoking completely.
That's Massachusetts.
Really?
Yep.
Wait,
really?
What?
Yeah, they want to ban all tobacco products.
Outdoors and everything?
Yeah.
Cannabis is okay, though?
Yeah, isn't that just a weird contradiction? You can smoke one plant
weird.
there and not have another?
Wow.
That is so weird.
So, I mean, is this going to be, that's massive. Okay, so is it kind of phased in?
Sarah,
right now, if you're 21, you could buy still, in 5 years, are they... Is that what they're talking about?
I have no idea. I don't really care.
Wait, so they're going to ban the act of smoking or ban buying cigarettes?
I don't know.
That is shocking.
I think what I was told was that, purchasing cigarettes. So it's like, right now, you could buy, if you're 21, you could buy cigarettes. What is the age? 18 or something? So when this law becomes in effect, that year, nobody's allowed to buy cigarettes, period. Doesn't matter if you're 70 or 50 or 20. So it's kind of like prohibition. Isn't like alcohol prohibition. That didn't work out too well, right?
No, it didn't. And this is going to work. This is not going to work out well either.
It's going to create a black market that already exists for cigarettes because people go to New Hampshire to get taxless cigarettes, and also people who are under 21 still smoke cigarettes all the time. But yeah, it's going to make the black market for cigarettes stronger and more profitable.
Well, the argument is that isn't cocaine, heroin, aren't they all illegal, but still people do it?
Right.
Like meth but people still do all those drugs, but it's under, they have to hide, and they have to, they just can't sell it outright. So I think that's what's going to happen is that if you're not allowed to have cigarettes at all, buy it, And obviously, it's just not going to. You're not allowed to smoke. Period. Anywhere. I mean, including the city park, city sidewalks, and so forth. Right.
Well, they've already done kind of a lot of towards that of banning smoking in public areas, but as far as I know, I've never heard of anybody going to jail for smoking in a public park or something where they're not supposed to.
They're not gonna but they will come down and make them put them out. I mean, I lived in Boston, so I know they really mean it, because you have one smoker. There's 10 non-smokers at a bus stop, and they will call them out, and they'll have the security put it out or get off the sidewalk. And
well, that's just mean.
Huh?
Well, that's just mean. Have you ever smoked, Sarah? Like at all, ever? Have you ever smoked a cigarette? Oh, you should totally try it.
Sarah, my question is, do you support prohibition?
Well, actually, I do support it. I do, because I hate smokers, and they're always stuck up all this no smoking signs.
Oh, now you're hurting my feelings.
That's
but
pretty
here's
mean.
The thing. They still smoke. Do you think smokers in Albuquerque will quit smoking at a bus stop?
Yeah,
they got a sign
but Sarah,
stuck
they
up?
lied to you about the effects of secondhand smoke. They're negligible or nothing.
The other thing is, Sarah, you hate...
You just don't like the way it smells.
You hate...
But maybe I don't like the way your perfume smells, but I'm not calling the cops on you. You're just being mean, and that's it.
You hate smokers, you support prohibition, but you just admitted that prohibition doesn't work.
Well, I think there's going to be still a lot of black market. People will still smoke, but it's just going to clamp down on it. It's just when nobody's allowed to buy anything, nobody's going to be allowed to smoke anywhere in the public. And I'm talking about parks, sidewalks, bus stops. We're just not going to see that.
Do you think that that's a good way to spend police's time when there are people speeding and all these other things that are worse in your mind, Sarah?
Well, I think it is, because there's not going to be anybody doing it. That's it. You can't even hardly buy it. You have to get it from, and you're not allowed to smoke anywhere.
Massachusetts is tiny.
Guess what, Sarah? I'm still going to be doing it, and I know that because when I smoked weed in Salt Lake, it was totally illegal, and they would have put me in an actual cage for doing so, but I still did it every day.
Yeah, pretty much me too. Well, I didn't do it every day, but I was enjoying cannabis in Utah, and I still would.
I did too. I did it on a military base that's pretty top or high security, but never got in trouble for it. Really close calls a couple times. There was a time that
now that I know the way you are about smokers, I'm gonna come and smoke next to you when it's illegal, and then when they come down to bust me, I'm just gonna throw the cigarette butt at your feet and blame it on you.
That's pretty mean too, but she did say she hates you.
She did say she hates me, so she started it.
Has talked about that she smokes on the air. Aria, I think, still smokes and has talked about it on the air. Sarah's just said she hates all of you three.
Yeah, that's really sad, isn't it?
I think, Chris Reitman smokes vapes. She hates like half of our hosts. Openly hates them. That's pretty mean, Sarah.
It's pretty mean.
It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. Don't go anywhere. 603-283-6160. We're going to get to your calls when we come back from the break. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at the week's top stories. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. FSN's Nina Maria Potts has more.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is in its third day and involves an Israeli commitment to withdraw ground troops from Lebanon within 60 days, with a stepped-up presence from the Lebanese army and UN troops monitoring the south. Hezbollah has agreed to keep its fighters out of an area between the Lebanese border with Israel and the Litani River running parallel to it. Meanwhile, there's deepening anxiety over the plight of hundreds and thousands of displaced Palestinians as winter conditions worsen. And there's anxiety over the looming transition of power in Washington, with questions over what a Trump presidency will bring. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
The G7 has condemned Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. It was the final meeting for foreign ministers from the group, which includes the U.S., the U.K., and Japan, before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. FSN's Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
In their final statements, the G7 called Russia's use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile earlier this month reckless and escalatory. They also reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, despite fears that the incoming Trump administration in Washington could waver in terms of financial and military backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, the group called on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza and once again accused China of distorting international markets through unfair trade practices, an allegation that Beijing denies. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. Trump also pledged to impose tariffs on Canadian and Chinese imports. FSN's Mitch McCann has more.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We close the week out with the end of an icon. It was announced this week that the world-famous Smithfield Meat Market in London is to close permanently after 850 years in business. For Londoners, it is news that is as jarring as the closure of the Covent Garden Fruit and Vegetable Market back in 1974, and it had only been running for 3 centuries.
It's alive with meat traders selling their meat, and it's just the most wonderful place, and to visit it is an experience of a lifetime.
Peter Twist leads tours of the market and is an official guide with the City of London.
The market's been in those fabulous buildings for the best part of a century now, and they're just tired and not big enough. And most important, of course, the meat comes from lorries. And so at night, you've got lorries coming from Poland, from Ireland, from Scotland, from Wales, and it's just a terrible traffic jam. You've got to visit it at night, round about midnight when it starts trading, or at the very latest, about 7 o'clock in the morning when we do our tours. And you can look at all the meat. You can see what the prices are like, which are eye-watering cheaper than they would be in a supermarket. And it's just full of tradition and full of very interesting meat traders who have worked there all their lives, generation after generation.
Your time to take a tour is running out. The market will conduct its last trading day in 2028. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The week's top stories again. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. The G7 condemns Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. And Mexico's president threatens to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitz.
Hollywood's biggest stars are rallying for a good cause this week with the Save Our Children campaign. Celebs like Jessica Simpson, Brad Pitt, and Gwyneth Paltrow headlined a charity event to help their suffering kids who desperately need a chance to live a normal life. Angelina Jolie talked to Starfix about the charity, saying, quote, "You don't have to be a mother to want to help my children, many of whom are not getting a proper education. If you look at the numbers, 1 in 5 of my children will struggle with drug problems." Joining us now is a representative from the charity, Julie Harrison. Julie, it was such a great cause.
Absolutely. We're talking about children who don't have any positive role models. They're born into a life they didn't ask for. And if the state's not going to step up and help these kids, it's time someone did something.
Here's a quote from Victoria Beckham, and I found this powerful. "It breaks my heart to think about these kids living somewhere in my house with no hope for a happy future. Who knows if they even have food to eat?" Julie, according to your group's website, a staggering number of STARS children are being exploited growing up without parents.
Right.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160, 603-283-6160, and I'd like to thank Andrew for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Andrew went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Andrew and everyone who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. And we really do appreciate everyone who signs up. And thank you so much to Andrew. On the show on Free Talk Live with you tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Riley.
And we already have a caller on the line, so we can talk more about this Musk, quote-unquote, sicking his followers towards poor individual federal employees later. I think that's pretty hilarious, especially that they're all upset about it. But we're going to go to the phones first. We have David in New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Power, power, power!
David, are you a smoker?
Am I a smoker? No. Why do I sound like one?
No, but just because Sarah was saying she hates smokers.
No. Yeah. Well, I don't hate smokers, but I don't particularly enjoy breathing smoke. Not even around a camp. I like campfires, but I don't want to. When the smoke is going that way, I don't go sit over there to be in the smoke. I go to the side without the smoke.
I'd have to agree. I don't hate smokers, but I don't want to be smoked and it blown at me. Obviously, I don't think really anyone does, and that's kind of etiquette. Like, smokers try not to do that.
Yeah, I smoke and I don't want somebody else's smoke blown at me.
Yeah.
Well, worse than the smoke itself is the stink. If they're wherever they are, the curtains stink, the carpet stinks, their clothing stinks, the furniture stinks, everything stinks.
There's something I kind of like
smoke.
about it.
I don't smoke inside. I don't like that smell either.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to live in a house where somebody smoked inside or anything, but there's something I kind of like about when, I don't know, just somebody's just around and they have a little bit of the smell. It's bad when it's like really, really strong, like people with perfumes. Like, I can like somebody's perfume, but if it's really strong, it's gonna be like disgusting me and probably hurt my nose, etc. Like my grandparents' house kind of smells like smoke, and I kind of like that. But then my grandpa would actively light up a cigarette while I'm sleeping in like rooms away, and it would still wake me up. Like, there's just a balance. I think that lots of people overreact about the smell, and I think people do that with weed too, just because they want to somehow control other people's behaviors. They're like, it's a huge thing on like Twitter right now, people tweeting,
"Oh yeah, weed is stinky, it's so gross. It's
ever
so
since we
disgusting.
legalized it, every city smells like weed."
And it's so disgusting when people light it in public. It's so immoral.
And that's the thing, when people can't control someone else, in some ways, sometimes they will do it like passive aggressively. And I think that sometimes it can be a good natural thing, and that like if somebody is being a certain way, kind of shaming them into being that way. But people, it's just human nature. They'll do it with everything they don't like, you know.
Well, that one town in California has always smelled like weed.
Which one?
Weed.
Weed.
Oh, that's stupid. That one city in Utah has always smelled like beaver.
Yeah, I drove through weed one time on a drive back from Oregon to Salt Lake.
Have you been to Beaver, Utah, Riley?
Yes, I
Or
have.
Stu?
How do you know what beaver smells like, Bonnie?
I've driven through the Fillmore Beaver area many times in Utah, yes.
I used to go to school with other kids that were in Beaver, and their school was called Beaver as well.
Yeah, the county just next to it is called Fillmore, so it's pretty funny.
How do you know what beaver smells like, Bonnie?
I don't know. It just thought it was
It smells kind of mountainous.
It's
kind of
kind
like pine trees.
It's kind of horrible, but like everybody in Utah makes jokes about it, and also SLUT, Salt Lake, Utah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I live there. Hey, so since you said that, let me permanently change every listener's brain so that they can never hear this song the same way ever again. You know the Bee Gees, right? Well, Bonnie won't. She won't know.
I
who it
love
is.
the Bee Gees.
Oh, so you like that song, Nice Beaver? Nice Beaver, Nice Beaver.
That's not how it
You know?
goes, but I can't.
Yeah, it is, Bonnie.
I felt like that's how it goes, but yeah, go ahead.
There you go. You broke all the listeners' brains.
So I changed the lyrics from Night Fever to Nice Beaver.
I like it.
And so-
It's an improvement.
Yeah, it is.
You don't like the Bee Gees?
No, yeah, they're okay. I get it. I can get down with that. That's original enough that I like it. Yeah.
The disco
Fever,
Bee Gees.
Night Fever. That's how it goes. That's why I
need
just
to-
I was like,
Yes.
how does it go? He really messed me up.
Oh yeah, he's
Now I
parodying.
know why
Yes.
Bonnie knows what beaver smells like.
Anyways, I just thought that was a funny thing to say.
Yep, and if you're from Utah, you know how to fill more beaver.
Oh my god. Yeah. I would go to school with other kids in different schools because we would be like all on the same video call and like be in classes. So there were so many jokes made about them.
Power, Bonnie. Power.
Power.
You're talking about power. Oh, and before we get to this is power. I wanted to talk about power at the county level. But your news there was something about the Mexican president, right? You know who that is, right?
A woman, right? Is it the woman
Yeah.
yet? No, I don't know her
Yeah.
name.
Do you know her name?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. Well, and you were talking. You had a caller. You were talking about basically control of the world, and you were talking about Rothschilds, and you were talking about Trump, and you were talking about Israel, and you're talking about all that world power structure. Mexico, right? Probably one of the biggest Catholic countries in the world, right?
Maybe, I don't know. I guess so. Is it?
Well, I would think so. I haven't pulled up the stats, but it's pretty obvious that if Catholicism is big anywhere, it's big in Mexico.
It definitely is.
And then yet they have a president that's and so I don't get kicked off the radio or people don't show up at my house. I'll say that's not Catholic, not Protestant, not Momo there, Riley. And so what does that leave? Don't answer it. They'll be at the door if you answer the question. They shall not be named.
The atheists?
Those that shall not be. Yeah, well, actually, you're probably onto something there, Riley.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know how they would be that, but I know you're talking about the Jews.
No. Because actually, let's quote Jesus. Riley was onto something. Jesus said something in the Bible, and I probably shouldn't quote him because I don't want people, to come looking for me. But what does he say? It's about those that call themselves something but are not. Riley?
I can't remember that off the top of my head right now.
Me either.
Those that call themselves blank. Now we have a game show. The Free Talk Live game show. Gotta have some.
Those that call themselves Jews but are not.
That's what it is. I was afraid to say it. I'm glad. Someday I'll be brave like Stu.
Hey, no problem, man. I got you back.
This isn't Jesus talking. It says it's in Revelation 2:9. I know your affliction and poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who call themselves Jew and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. So Jesus isn't in there, right?
So explore that a moment. So,
I think that might be Jesus being quoted there.
But Revelation was John's vision of the future. Was Jesus quoted in it?
Well, it was partially a letter to 7 churches in Asia, so I think he starts out with the letter to the 7 churches in Asia, calling them to repentance.
Well, but did John actually quote Jesus in it?
Yes.
But was it Jesus talking in his vision?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't exactly call that a quote from Jesus.
And time-wise, it wouldn't make any sense for them to say those who call themselves Christians but aren't, right? So, So what they're really describing there is name stealing, which is going under a false flag or calling, taking the guise of one thing when you're really not that.
So John claimed that Jesus said these things, but did you have a point you were going to make about him saying they're the synagogue of Satan? Well, he said that some people claim to be Jews, but really are the synagogue of Satan. So it's not really him saying that about all Jews.
Right, but in bringing it forward to this time, today, present day, current day, so you have people that are in power, and some of us are afraid to talk about them because bad things happen when you criticize somebody of a particular demographic.
The Clinton family.
Yeah, exactly. But who are they? Who are they actually? You know what I mean? If someone says that identifies as, I'm this, and so you can't criticize me. But who are they really? Did their ancestors trace directly back to the Holy Land, or did they come from somewhere else?
The Amplified Bible, that's another version like King James, blah, 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 finishes off the quote you gave by saying, they are Jews only by blood and do not believe and truly honor the God whom they claim to worship.
Okay, and we're not necessarily talking about one group of people because the Bible is using that language in reference to a certain situation. And in present day, I'm using that as an analogy. We have a similar thing going on that if there is a demographic of people that is holding undue influence over the rest of us, I allege, and they say that they are such and such, are they really? Or are they, like Stu said, the phrase name stealers, actually, quote unquote, name stealers comes from somewhere. Do you know where that comes from, Bonnie?
No.
Stu?
I'm not sure of the origin, no.
Okay, well, here's an allegation, and I use the word allegation intentionally that I've become aware of. I'm no expert in this. I just, I read and I listen, and then I if I state something, I'm repeating what I heard or read. So it's an allegation because I'm not the original researcher. But the allegation is, Silk Road, right? I mean the original one, not the Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah.
Silk Road, you know what the Silk Road is or was, or not is, but was, right?
Mm-hmm. It was like a path that people would take, like merchants would take to trade from like the east to the west of the known world.
Right, and it wasn't really
just years?
one
I don't know.
road. It wasn't just one road. It was many roads that went from the Occident to the Orient, from east to west, just like what you just said. And along that route, things from Europe would go that one direction, and things from Asia would come back the other direction. And so there was constant trade and merchants along the way. And then wherever you have highways and trade and money and valuables, you get various things that are criminal as well that happen along the way. And there's the allegation that there were people that lived like in the area of eastern Ukraine, or just north of there and just east of there. Like for instance, in Russia, there's what is alleged to be the monetary capital of the world, the city of, is it pronounced Kazan? And there was an ancient country that is no longer in existence because, countries come and countries go, but Khazaria, and had a king of Khazaria. And,
I know what you're getting at.
Pardon?
Caesarea?
Whatever, pronounce it however, tomato. Yeah. So, but there was an allegation, to get directly to the point, that, if you have highway bandits along the highway, whether they're literally, ambushing people along the highway, or people that are traveling down the highway, stay in some town overnight and then disappear. There was an allegation that along that route that people would be disappeared, and not only would they be robbed for what they had on them, but they would then be impersonated. A European business person in eastern Ukraine on the Silk Road would disappear, and then they would show back up in Europe, and they might look slightly different, but they'd have they'd have their name and everything, and they would just assume that person's identity and take over whatever it is that they had.
Wow, that's crazy. And that makes a lot of sense because, it's not like they had like the internet or photographs to carry around.
DNA test.
Yeah, DNA tests or anything like that to prove who they were.
Iris scan, Bonnie, iris scan.
And if you haven't ever met this person, you've never seen a picture of them, but you're supposed to be awaiting John Smith to come trade with you, and somebody shows up claiming to be John Smith, well, that's John Smith to you.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the same thing, like back in the 1920s, 1910s, the aughts, 1890s. You could be a bank robber, and people really didn't even know what you looked like. So you could just stop bank robbing, go to a different location, and nobody would ever know.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where the part of where the phrase the name stealers comes from, and so that comes back to that relates to the question of people that say they are one thing, but are they really?
This is a long running concept too. You can point at a ton of American politicians that claim to be Christians and they're never actually been to church.
Yeah, like Donald Trump.
Right. So in all of those ways of, there's a word I'm looking for, but I can't find it.
Exactly.
Yeah, who knows? But anyway, so they use it to control you. They use all of these games to control you.
Yeah, it's a type of mental manipulation.
Yeah, and until go ahead, Bonnie.
Well, I feel like we need to connect it to what we were saying at the beginning. So, and by the way, when I was saying, this version says that they are of the bloodline, but not of the actual belief in God. I was just saying that that's another way to look at it. Another way that somebody could be somebody who isn't what they say they are, kind of. And it's like, I feel like Jews purposely do mix things together where it's like, right now I'm being just the bloodline and I'm talking about that, but now I've suddenly switched into talking about the religion. Oh, it's all the same word. you know, and I'm not saying it's always something negative. I'm just saying you could use that to create different identities and like trick people mid-sentence kind of thing.
Yeah,
and,
it's an ethnicity or a religion or both or neither, depending on what's convenient.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's how I see it being worse to our greatest detriment is you have a group of people that are criminals, and then they say, you know, we are these people, and then they guilt you out for being racist or whatever, so you can't criticize them, and they use that shaming so that you can't talk about them and call them out for their criminal behavior, because if you call them out for their criminal behavior, you're being racist or you're being anti whatever. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's manipulation another way.
Yeah. Well, then now you can tie that into Vietnam. Is there were POWs in Vietnam, and I'm sure that's not the only place, but that's where I heard it related to, is that their captors would try to make the POWs feel guilty for fighting on behalf of the United States, and maybe they should have. But that's a technique that the captors would use in their interrogations, is to try to make them feel guilty in order to break them down and get more out of them. So yes, and the reason I said that is because you used the word manipulation, and I guess I should have supplied the exact quote that was given to me, and that is, the direct quote is, quote, that they can't manipulate you if you don't allow them to make you feel guilty, end quote.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about a lot of leftist stuff, and that's how I've been thinking about it recently, is just like, it's in feminine nature especially to just be like, yeah, I'm going to go along to get along with a bunch of this social restructuring, social redefining stuff, but really I don't want to, and the way to stop doing that, going along with stuff, is to stop feeling guilty or manipulated by whoever it is that wants you to act a certain way or believe a certain thing or proclaim that you believe a certain thing.
Yeah, if you can be sure that your actions are in honor, then you got nothing to feel guilty about. And then you can talk about the Jews whatever way you want to.
But you can't, because they won't let you in the middle.
Well, I mean, the ADL will still come smash you to pieces, but
the who, the NAP, the ADL. What is the ADL?
Anti-Defamation League. I think you know what that is.
Yeah, but I was playing dumb so that you would say it for me.
Oh.
Okay.
And the Anti-Defamation League was formed when?
I don't remember.
I don't
probably
remember
wasn't
either.
alive.
Was it the same year as the Balfour Declaration? Is that what you're going to say?
What year was the IRS created?
Not sure on that one.
1913.
13. Oh.
Yeah. What year was the Fed created?
1913.
Oh, and Anti-Defamation League's also in 1913, it says here.
That's impossible, Riley.
Whoa.
They can't all three be in the same year.
Sure they can.
No,
Sure
they can't, Riley. That's you're trying to you're conspiracy talking.
What are you gonna do about it, David?
I'm gonna steal your cane, Riley.
That's mean.
I've got a second one.
Next thing you're going to tell me, David, is it?
Stole that one. I already stole that one, Riley.
No, you didn't.
Speaking of
Right
that,
before he
Riley, Riley, I saw your Facebook page because I was looking at Mark Edge's Facebook post, and I saw you had commented, so I clicked on there, and that's a pretty cool idea that you had, that you came up, that thing you invented for blind people.
What did I invent for blind people?
Well, instead of walking around with a cane, trying not to run into things, like cars, hitting you, what you do is you make noise with that noisemaker thing, and you walk around while you're making that noise, and then everybody hears you coming, and nobody will run you over with a car.
Wait, what is he talking about, Riley?
I have no idea.
Well, that bag that's full of air that's got these pipes coming out of it, and it makes this awful noise.
Awful noise.
Yeah.
Are you talking about bagpipes, David?
Oh, is that what you call it? Isn't there a musical instrument called that already? You should pick a different name, Riley.
Yeah, I should, huh?
Yeah, that's what he does. He walks downtown Keene playing bagpipes, and no one stops him. He walks through people's yards doing it because he can't see, so no one stops him. They hear him coming.
Yeah, that reminds me of that old bagpipe joke. You know, do you know why pipers walk while they're bagpiping?
Someone told me it's to get away from the noise.
Yeah, to get away from that awful noise.
It's so mean. I like the way it sounds. I think it's cool.
I do too.
603-283-6160. Thank you for the call, David. More coming up on Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160. More coming up.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at the week's top stories. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah mostly appears to be holding, despite both sides trading accusations over violations of the terms of the deal. FSN's Nina Maria Potts has more.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is in its third day and involves an Israeli commitment to withdraw ground troops from Lebanon within 60 days, with a stepped-up presence from the Lebanese army and UN troops monitoring the south. Hezbollah has agreed to keep its fighters out of an area between the Lebanese border with Israel and the Litani River running parallel to it. Meanwhile, there's deepening anxiety over the plight of hundreds and thousands of displaced Palestinians as winter conditions worsen. And there's anxiety over the looming transition of power in Washington, with questions over what a Trump presidency will bring. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
The G7 has condemned Russia's irresponsible and threatening nuclear rhetoric after 2 days of talks in Italy. It was the final meeting for foreign ministers from the group, which includes the U.S., the U.K., and Japan, before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. FSN's Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
In their final statement, the G7 called Russia's use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile earlier this month reckless and escalatory. They also reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, despite fears that the incoming Trump administration in Washington could waver in terms of financial and military backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, the group called on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza and once again accused China of distorting international markets through unfair trade practices, an allegation that Beijing denies. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. Trump also pledged to impose tariffs on Canadian and Chinese imports. FSN's Mitch McCann has more.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
Stu.
And Riley.
And it's officially unofficial. We've been podcasting since podcasts began, but we're launching a new podcast anyway. Our new podcast is a 30 to 45 minute show releasing once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. The existing radio archive isn't going anywhere. This is just a new show designed from the start to be a podcast, so check it out at freetalkcast.com. And here on Free Talk Live, you can call 603-283-6160 to get in on the conversation with us. Stu, you brought in this story from Jacobin. I am not sure that I've ever heard of this website till today, but it's like the name Jacob and then IN, so jacobin.com. And this article is just titled, Gen Z is Super Weird.
I've also heard it pronounced Jacobin.
Oh, Jacobin?
Yeah.
And that is just such a funny title. It almost seems lazy.
It's kind of a weird thing going back to like the French Revolution, where one of the political parties during that time was called the Jacobins.
Oh,
and that was like the far left wing thing, and so this is a left wing publication. But anyways,
I wonder if it's similar to the Jacobites in Scotland, because I know in Scotland in the 1700s there was a group of people who were loyal to a king a Stuart king from Scotland, and wanted them to rule Scotland, and so they were calling themselves Jacobites. I wonder if they're related.
I wonder how the name, so was the king's last name Jacob?
I don't think so. I have no idea.
I was going to say that'd be interesting since that's like a Hebrew name or whatever. It's from the Bible. So I just think it's kind of a lazy title. Gen Z is super weird. It sounds like a Gen Z person definitely wrote that, but I don't know who this Amber Ali Frost is. But let's get into it. I just want to know what she means by that. From monarchism to eco-fascism, internet subcultures have given rise to a new generation of ideologies. Amber Frost dives into the meaning of Zoomer politics. So since February 2023, artist, university lecturer, and internet culture writer Joshua Citarella has been conducting interviews with a wide array of subjects who have formed their politics out of internet subcultures. It would be a crude oversimplification to say that their so-called ideologies range far and wide across the political spectrum, as the real hallmark of an ideology. So it's like saying, if it's not clear, ideology, but with an E because it's from the internet.
Yeah, like electronic ideology. Or,
yeah.
Yep.
So I just didn't want people to think I was reading the word ideology wrong. Like ideology, it sounds English or British or whatever.
Yeah, it's a new made-up word for the purpose of the article.
Yeah. So it says, the real hallmark of an ideology is not so much how right or left it is as its tendency to collect respective baroque, is that how you say that word? Idiosyncrasies and qualifications. These are not merely Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and liberals or even socialists and libertarians. These are self-identified pan-constitutional monarchists, anti-democratic transhumanists, anarcho-primitivist electoralists.
Oh my God.
Islamo-nationalists, agrarian voluntarists, eco-fascists, and many more seemingly infinite permutations of boutique ideas. Here are some excerpts from one interviewee, anonymized by their screen name Papa Coomer, a third positionist, aka fascist. So the question here, how would you describe your politics or ideology? Third position. how would you describe your wait, why does it say it twice? I don't know. Who are your biggest influences? Hans Hermann Hoppe, James Mason, William Luther Pierce, Mencius Moldbug, crazy name.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first learn about or start visiting online political communities? 2017. Citarella interviews Zoomers. I don't think that gave us that much information about this.
No, not really.
Third positionist. Citarella interviews Zoomers, which explains why another one of his interviewees, a 16-year-old from Texas, can say the jobs of the not-too-distant future will be guerrilla fighter, neoliberal slave, neoliberal master with a straight face. This person told Citarella, this is like the hardest article I've ever read, by the way. They're like throwing in big words just to throw in big words on top of these weird new names.
Sure,
yeah, making up words. Yep.
So it says that this person told Citarella, the 16-year-old, the 16-year-old told Citarella they've been visiting online communities since 2016. So wait, since they were 8 or something? I don't know. That was like 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
If they are to be believed, this means that they were then 9 years old, tops. And if they are to be believed, they have been politically active offline as well, though this is not expanded upon. They do not mention whether their mom and dad had to drive them around. To say that right-wing extremism and reactionary radicalization and yes, even fascism are on the rise among American youth has to come with some context. Have either of you two heard about the rising trend of TikTokers talking about how Hitler was actually kind of a good guy and playing his speeches dubbed in English thanks to AI?
I didn't hear about that trend, but I've seen people posting about it on Next. Hitler was a good guy. He did no wrong, and things like that.
I wouldn't go as far as to say he was a good guy, but I bet if you look into his speeches, you'll find some things that contradict the official narrative.
That is definitely the case, and some of the things you can almost sympathize with him, where he was coming from when you hear it in English. I had never done this before. I had never went and been like, oh, I want to hear a Hitler speech in his own words, and went and did the work to go translate one. I've never done that, but I watched one of these TikTok AI translations, which you don't even know if you can trust it, but
yeah.
Some of the things he was saying just revolve around, we want, you can't hate somebody for just wanting. The thing is, I don't like him. I'm just saying it did put him in a better light than the textbooks that I grew up with put him in. Like, they wanted you to think that he just wanted to kill or something.
Yeah, he was a monster, and all these people were like, hooray, let's have a monster. No, that's not how that went.
Hooray, let's have a monster. Yeah, exactly. It was more like the things he was saying were palatable. I don't remember
he was a politician.
Quotes.
He wanted to say things that were palatable to the people, and they could resonate with it.
And then ended up doing evil things.
Oh, yeah.
One of the scariest American presidents, George W. Bush, said a lot of really libertarian things on his campaign trail.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I think it's not good for a different reason than the leftists think it's not good that it's rising. They think just like, oh, a bunch of people are going to become Nazis. I think that it's just like, well, you're not going to start to think that he did good things. Maybe this is the same reason that the leftists think it's not good. People listening to his speeches and thinking, oh, my government lied to me, that's a good thing. My government lied to me about certain things Hitler believed. It's like, what else is your government lying to you about?
Mm-hmm.
Everything else.
Keep asking that question.
Yeah.
But it's also like, if you aren't a questioning type of person and then you just see this on TikTok and then you start to think Hitler wasn't that bad of a guy, and then suddenly everything he did wasn't bad, well, that's not true.
Yeah, and I can say that all of Hitler's big ideas were pushed and supported even more so in America before everything turned around on him.
Yeah, people were in America, like in colleges and stuff, being like, there's this guy named Hitler, before it was like really that big, and saying like...
Well, eugenics was really popular, and a lot of his programs were funded by American financiers.
Yep, that's true. yeah, lots of people were more gung-ho about Hitler before it was unpopular.
Yeah, IBM made the punch cards for the for the Stasi to keep surveillance on everybody in East Germany.
Whoa.
So,
What's IBM? What do they do?
Computers.
Yeah, they're computer manufacturers.
Basically one of the two major computer companies at the time. Or maybe the only one.
Interesting.
Yeah, very close with government.
So it says that, so I asked that question because we had just read this from the article. It says, to say that right-wing extremism and reactionary radicalization and yes, even fascism are on the rise among American youth has to come with some context. Is it troubling? Certainly. Am I scared of Gen Z brown shirts beating down my door in the dead of night and interning me in the Bitcoin server camps? Not really, for a few reasons. I mean, you just kind of set up a Bitcoin server and let it do its thing, but whatever.
Yeah.
Just like she thinks you have to run on a hamster wheel or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you could power your Bitcoin miner that way.
Yeah, by running on a hamster wheel. A few comments from our Sweet 16 Texan. The question is, how they were asked was, how would you describe your politics or ideology? The answer is, ideology is dead. I only work to collapse the current system so a new one can rise from the old's ashes. You don't have your own special little ideology. It's accelerationism.
Yeah, it pretty much sounds like accelerationism to me. Or collapsitarianism.
Yeah. How would you describe your politics or ideology? Third position. I hadn't heard this term until today.
No, me neither.
Who are your biggest influences? Ted Kaczynski, yep. Accelerationist, yep. Nick Land, don't know that one, and James Mason, also mentioned by the other one. Do you guys know those two?
No.
No.
And back to the article says, and then there are the predictions delivered with utmost confidence, like all 16-year-olds. The question asked was, what changes do you want to see in the next 10 years? And the answer was the collapse of the United States, mass awareness of the current global state, and rejection of neoliberal and Enlightenment ideals. What exactly is an example of an Enlightenment ideal, like individuality, maybe?
I would think that individuality would be an Enlightenment ideal because it comes out of the period of the Enlightenment. I mean, the Enlightenment era produced a lot of thinkers like John Locke and, all these other people. Like,
I don't understand this person then. They're not being very, consistent because it's like they are saying that they want a collapse of the government so that people will see and take down the one world government, but they want to lose Enlightenment ideals. And Google's AI overview, real quick, says the ideals primarily included reason, liberty, progress, tolerance, individual rights, a social contract. Oh, that needs to go. And separation of church and state. So those are some examples of Enlightenment ideals. But
yeah. Something interesting about the Enlightenment was coffee was a huge thing in the Enlightenment because it was caffeine and people got energy from it and they could stay awake for hours and hours talking, philosophy over a cup of coffee.
Nice.
And alcohol put people to sleep. So, it's out because it's putting people to sleep, putting them into drunken stupor. So coffee was definitely a thing that really spurred on the Enlightenment.
Interesting. So that's what she wanted to see in the next 10 years. But what changes do you want to see in the next 40 years? The answer is collapse of the global system, return of agrarian lifestyle. What exactly is that? Like farming?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, subsistence farming, yeah.
A feasible solution to climate change.
This person's got to be an idiot.
Yeah, sounds like it to me. They even write it here. They said, our junior accelerationist wasn't always an adherent of what they referred to as anti-systemic thought. They identified as a Marxist-Leninist in 2016 when they were 8 years old.
Wow.
They've bounced around a lot saying, I've been an anarchist, fascist, communist, etc. They're also 16, so we're just talking about somebody's phase they're going through, but
yeah.
It's just not very likely what you believe at 16 will last into adulthood. See, that's what I said too. Young people are pretty flighty, and there's no way to predict where their impetuous passions will land them. Not only do they change their minds a lot, they change them drastically, which isn't anything remarkable to anyone who remembers being a teen. Caprice being a hallmark of... Caprice? I've never heard that word. Being a hallmark of youth. Take Jay, a 22-year-old self-described reactionary. He was that's kind of a funny way to describe yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a reactionary. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter back in 2016, or R, who identifies as an anarcho-communist but was an eco-fascist in 2019. That doesn't seem that different to me.
No.
When she was 11. They're also trying to make it look like Gen Z's so young. I think, like, the jig's got to be up soon because Gen Alpha is the actual young people at this point. Gen Z is people born in 1997. How old is that? Super old. They're born in the 1900s.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend was born in she's 26 this year, so she's probably born in 1928.
Did she?
1998, not 1928. My brain's a little off today.
I don't know how, I didn't even catch that, but so she turned 26 this year. She won't turn 27 this year.
No, she turned 26 in July.
So 1998.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's Gen Z. I am a millennial, and I was born 1996. It's
Okay.
really not fair, and it's dumb. And it's not because I really want to be Gen Z, but I really don't want to be millennial, because I'm just not. And I don't accept any of them because of that error that was made.
Why do you describe yourself more as a Gen Z person than millennial?
Well, because when I was 7 years old, I was making a bunch of different emails on my home computer to log into Neopets all by myself.
Uh-huh.
And millennials shouldn't be described as someone who was able to do that.
Okay.
Millennials are people that lived in the 80s and they're like, I remember when Gremlins came out. I was a Transformers kid. Not me. I'm not a millennial. It's like I grew up so differently just because of the internet.
Yeah, they were stuck between the Gen Xers and the next school thing. It's just kind of an in-between.
Yeah, it sure sounds that way.
That's so true. That's how I feel about millennials too. Like there's less to define them in a way.
Yeah.
Not that
I
I feel
remember
like
the
that
days
about
when millennials
individuals.
are blamed for all the ills in the world. Now it's Gen Z, and soon it'll be Gen Alpha.
That is completely true too. I remember lots of articles coming out about how dumb millennials are, and now it's Gen Z. But I just think that for some reason they're holding on really long to the young people, Gen Z. Am I right? And it's just like, I don't know. Gen Alpha is teenagers now.
Yeah, I place more blame the further back the generation is.
Yeah,
because
boomers.
you had more of a chance to change things.
It seems like I and that's the thing. Like I said, I don't actually accept this crap because, like Riley, you're a millennial. I don't think of you as like the way that I normally, when my brain conceptualizes millennial, think about them, because it is such an internet fake thing. Like it's such a, you can't categorize a group of everyone born between like, what is it, 10 years or 15 years, I think it is.
I think so too. I'm not sure how long it is.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, I was born in 86, so I didn't have internet access until the late 90s.
I've always kind of thought that too, that it's a barely useful categorization of age
Yeah,
groups.
like barely. Like sometimes you can see similarities, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's pretty millennial of you to think that, blah, blah.
Yeah, sometimes you have a 10 or 15 year period in where things in society are just radically different enough that you know what I mean, you could call that a generation, and it's remarkably different. But I don't think it happens, every 15 years, and they try to make it so. And that makes
so
it
true.
less useful.
Just pin or shoehorning it into exactly 15 years made it so unuseful to me as someone who just like, I know I'm nothing like somebody born in even like 1993 is much different than me.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you lived for like you were already out of the theta brainwave 6-year-old age when you first saw a screen, and I wasn't. I don't think. I don't know. I don't remember when I first saw a screen exactly. Well, I mean, there's always been TV screens, but I mean, like, when connected to the internet. Anyways, I basically just don't think that those are very useful. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I also think boomers are kind of the worst. It seems like they didn't do anything right the whole time. Like, they let the government get bigger and bigger and bigger, and to this day, they just seem to care the least. Like,
yeah, boomers were really bad. The so-called greatest generation was a major letdown too.
I don't know anything about them really. I know Chris on the show, A Not Penguin, is a boomer. Technically, he's like on the cusp, but just made it into boomer, I'm pretty sure. And he's not like them, but he said he lived most of his life kind of like them, like a neocon.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why some people break out of the programming and some people don't.
I think it's an awareness factor. I think at some point, some people become aware and some people just keep going along with the system because it's what they know. It's how they've been indoctrinated. Some people are like, I'm willing to question the system and question what this is.
But it's like some people, you can have it put right in their face and they just decide not to think about it, look at it. Like, I really thought when I first became like a libertarian, I could just keep posting these cops being violent videos, just keep posting them on my Facebook. And one day even like my best friend told me, like, because I lived on a military base and they were all government workers, including my best friend at the time. She was like, yeah, you really probably should stop posting that stuff because it's like pissing people off. Seriously? Like, did you even get the point? Nope. No,
obviously not.
They just wanted me to stop bothering them with the facts. So that's kind of the question though. Like, why do some people, when they become aware, change how they think and some people don't?
I think it's a matter of choice. I really think it's a matter of choice and how they want to view it. Do they want to frame it as something bad and try and fit it into their religious ideology or their mental ideologies, or do they frame it as something bad and think, okay, I've got to question the system and do something entirely different than what has been done before, because we keep going back and forth from Democrats, Republican, red versus blue, black versus white. We keep going back and forth, and it's not fixing anything. They're all the same now. They're all lying to us. So instead of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, let's try something new. Let's create the Free State Project. Let's try moving a bunch of libertarians to one place. This is why I'm a supporter of the Free State Project, because it's trying something new, something different, something that's never been done before.
For me, I think it's a matter of comfort levels in a person's life, and specifically comfort related to your relationship to your tribe. And if you feel like you're comfortable in your tribe, you're probably willing to put up with a fair amount of cognitive dissonance to remain in that tribe and accept it. And whereas for me personally, I always felt somewhat outside of the tribe, whatever the tribe was, whether it was Mormonism or statism, Boy Scouts, whatever the thing was. I never quite fit in. And so that feeling of not quite being in the tribe, I think, is what led me to just be okay with thinking for myself. Because what's the point of holding all that cognitive dissonance if you don't have a benefit for it anyways?
Sometimes, what's kind of interesting me when you say it like that, it's like, I always wonder why I'm like a libertarian and the rest of my siblings are not. It's like they're like, oh, I see where you're coming from, Bonnie. Like, they kind of like respect my opinion because I'm like basically the oldest, because the older two are F-ups. And anyways. And I was just thinking, like, I'm the only one that looks like me and they all look the same. Maybe that somehow put me as more possible to dissent. I don't know, because I don't know.
Yeah, being kind of the black sheep of the family would give you a feeling of being outside the tribe too.
Never thought about it like that. So.
And I was kind of also the black sheep of my family, so.
So next time I like identifying someone and wondering, why would they have broken from programming and someone else not? I'm going to think about their siblings. Sibling relationships have always been really interesting to me. It's like I can tell lots of things about somebody by what age. And it's not, and like there's like a science about it. You can go on the internet and find like, oh, what does it mean to be second born? Or if somebody's an only child, so many things about them immediately. But yeah, that's interesting stuff. I think that you could learn a lot from older people that did change from the crowd. It's just unfortunately they probably got outnumbered by the people who didn't want to change. This story, you can finish reading it at jacobin.com, saying Gen Z is really weird. But more from Free Talk Live, you can go to freetalklive.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and peace.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to